Chapter 251, A Frog in a Well. Martial world affairs, after all, is a matter for the martial world. Indeed, we all still need to reason. Although Tao Yu's move shocked everyone, it was just a display of his acoustic skill and lightness skill in capturing someone. His strength is definitely impressive, but it seems he doesn't kill, so there's nothing to be afraid of. When they forced Zhang Sanfan on Wudang Mountain in the past, it's not like they hadn't done it before. So what if he's invincible under the heavens? Once is an accident, twice is a pattern. Actually, the 6 major sects siege on Bright Summit is not solely due to past grievances, those grievances were just one of the sparks that set things off. Seeing the situation that had been almost under control erupt into chaos again with just a few words from Cheng Kun, Tao Yu couldn't help but sigh. It seems that being adept in lightness skill isn't enough. It looks like you're mistaking me for Wei Yuxiao. Tao Yu grinned, revealing his gleaming teeth. Then let's just have to settle it with a real fight. Dang! Kong Ji tapped his Zen staff on the ground, producing a dang sound, before saying in a deep voice. Your martial arts are indeed peerless, even just your lightness skill is unmatched. I fear there is no one here who can be your match. Even if we were to fight one after another in succession, we might not be able to defeat you. But if we were to attack together, you might not be able to kill us all. Goodness! Separated by 100 years in time, hearing words that were different in content but similar in meaning, Tao Yu found himself somewhat distracted. What is this? The Mim pollution of Shaolin Temple? Right, he is an evil demon, and everyone has the right to execute him. Xian Yatong also stepped forward. Moreover, at the beginning, we were deceived by Yin Tianzheng. They must have known they had reinforcements coming before proposing this challenge. They knew they had an unbeatable champion for one-on-one combat. Exactly, I think there's no need to talk about any martial morals with an evil demon. Let's shoulder to shoulder and go at him together. Even if his skill is peerless. Familiar words fell into his ears, making Tao Yu sigh again. It seems I was too soft-spoken before. No sooner had he spoken than Tao Yu slightly raised his hands, and many sacred fire orders shot out from the shadows and began to revolve around him. As blood-colored steam enshrouded his body, it burned like flames. The next moment he pushed with his hands, and accompanied by a high-pitched dragon's chant, a series of blood-colored dragons arrived one after the other. That dragon's chant was captivating, making people's hearts tighten. But the most terrifying was the swirling dragon shadow around the opponent, and the ravaging energy. Fierce air currents swept through, causing everyone to widen their eyes in disbelief that this could be the martial arts of the human realm. Within 6 or 7 zhang of Tao Yu, the dragon shadows shimmered. Under the inexhaustible nature and Tao Yu's control of the Qunkan Great Shift, his manipulation was even more exquisite than when he directly confronted the grassland army previously. I also know a little about fighting. Bang! Kong Xing's dragon claw hand pressed directly onto Cheng Kun's head, causing him to bleed from all orifices, with brain matter even spraying out of his nostrils. The overwhelmed Cheng Kun, utterly shocked by the spectacle before him, never expected such a move from behind, and died without a word. Misunderstanding. Kong Ji also quickly stepped forward with hands clasped, worthy of Shaolin. There's no misunderstanding, come at me shoulder to shoulder. Tao Yu had just acquired the Qunkan Great Shift and the 9 Yang Divine Skill, and completed his deification. He was originally a little embarrassed to strike at people without good reason. But now, he was ready to test the limits of his endurance. No sooner had he spoken than Tao Yu, like a tiger entering a flock of sheep, charged straight at the allied forces of the 6 great sects. A dozen or so blood dragons ravaged around Tao Yu, complemented by 12 sacred fire orders for added damage. 2209. The scene had completely changed. No, don't. An Imei disciple, faced with the charging blood dragon, displayed a face full of terror and could only attempt to block with her sword. But with a flick of the blood dragon's tail, the oppressive blood gang instantly shattered the long sword into several pieces, and the immense force sent her flying backward, blood spraying from her mouth. Fortunately, her life was spared. Some tried to flee, but even a glancing touch from a blood dragon sent them flying away, completely unable to resist. This scene was occurring every moment. Everywhere, elites of the 6 major sects were being thrown around involuntarily. The blood mist sprayed into the air even formed a rainbow, with weapons continuously breaking apart. The sounds of breaking weapons, snapping bones, spurting blood, bodies hitting the ground, and screams rose and fell in succession, like a ghastly concert of carnage. Even a slight touch led to blood spurting and bodies flying. While Tao Yu decided to conserve his energy and not burst them outright, Blood Gang, formed from his combined true Yuan, Gang Qi and spiritual will, was not something that most of these martial artists, who couldn't even externalize their inner strength, could withstand. Their only slight advantage over the grassland soldiers was the protective layer of inner strength, which prevented them from dying upon contact. Apart from a slight resistance, they were no different from ordinary people in other respects. The only ones who could put up some fight were the experts capable of externalizing their inner strength. In the case that Tao Yu did not directly use the blood dragons to burst targets, they could barely entangle for a moment or two. Ha! Kong Xing's dragon claw hand, filled with true qi, pounced towards a Zhonglong blood dragon that was tossing several Shaolin disciples through the air, his fierce claw aimed at the dragon's neck. But in the next instant, as the dragon's tail came sweeping at him, his expression changed drastically and he had to release his grip and defend himself with his hands. Chapter 252. Feeling the immense force transmitted through his hands, Kong Xing could only feel his bones groaning in protest, his complexion turning bitter. I've trained in the dragon claw hand, and now you actually have me grappling with a dragon. But now, in this arena, he had become one of the taller figures, and even with his palms feeling numb, he had no choice but to grit his teeth and face the challenge. Fortunately, Tao Yu did not choose to detonate the blood dragon Gang Qi all at once, and with Kong Xing's skill, he was just barely able to entangle one, with attacks and counterattacks. However, a powerhouse like King Golden Wheel barely survived facing 3 blood dragons, and even after recuperating for a month or two, he still hadn't fully recovered. The only ones here worthy of mention were the divine monks of the Shaolin Kong generation, Song Yuan Qiao and the nun wielding the heavenly sword. One of them was struggling bitterly against a blood dragon, the 5 elders of Kong Tong joined forces to entangle another one, and the remaining members of the 7 heroes of Wudang used the true martial 7-section formation to engage 2 more, while the rest were truly entering a no-man's land. Martial artists who couldn't project their true qi outward were simply no match for even one exchange. Are you kidding me? Xian Yatong, seeing a blood dragon specifically targeting him, truly had a bitter look on his face. This is too much honor for me. But he had also noticed the situation earlier, the enemy seemed to be holding back, mostly inflicting injuries without killing. With his skill level being much higher than the young ones, why not take this opportunity to leave the scene? Thinking this, he straightened his expression and then, with a tone full of righteous indignation, said, "Now is the time, let me, Xian Yatong, see what you're capable of, ha." Crack spurt. With a flick of its tail and a sound of breaking bones, the dragon didn't explode the man directly, but it did send him flying out, dead before he hit the ground. In his final moments, the light and drifting body of Xian Yatong still bore a face of confusion. Wasn't it supposed to be non-lethal? Why do I feel like I'm dying? His head tilted, his breath ceased. With the death of the first sect leader, many faces on the scene turned tragic. The situation became quite chaotic for a moment. It was still manageable when the tournament started with one-on-one matches, but now it was truly just Tao Yu suppressing everyone in combat. Ganging up? No, it was a group of people being attacked by one person. Within a radius of 6 or 7 zhong, absolutely no one could contend, only able to continuously skirt the edges and whittle away. Like a lion charging into a pack of hounds, scattering his opponents with each blow. Disciples were sent flying like bowling pins, spewing blood, while the few great masters struggled desperately. If it weren't for the fact that he was actually holding back, there would definitely be corpses scattered all over. After persisting for about a quarter of an hour, Tao Yu finally gestured with both hands, pulling back the blood dragons to continue coiling around him. Tao Yu tested his own endurance. By this time, he had used up much of his resources. But because of the one certificate, forever valid, his aura seemed as if it hadn't been affected in the slightest, still so powerful and showing no signs of fatigue. Quite impressive. I've harnessed the strength of the Big Dipper to lead star power, and the Yuan Force has sped up so much along the way, not in vain. Combined with the recovery traits of the 9 Yang Divine Skill, I've extended the endurance time by at least half, although the proportion of Gang Qi and mental energy consumption has changed, making it hard to balance the 3. Tao Yu was very satisfied with his current state. Although he didn't let the blood dragons shatter and unleash their strongest attacks, except for the strongest few, he could easily deprive them of their fighting capacity. Using powerful effects might not solve everything, but it's enough to kill their backbone. If I only circulate through the meridians without using special effects, killing everyone would be easy, it would just take longer to deal with. After all, there's no need to detonate the blood dragon against opponents here. Tao Yu had already made a rough estimate in his mind. Should he choose to let the blood dragons explode, although it would consume a lot, the key figures of the 6 major factions would all collectively perish. Elite disciples would be decimated. This was a high-consumption special attack, seeking only a quick and explosive resolution. If he relied purely on the continuous circulation of true Yuan through the meridians, solely relying on the physical augmentation, he'd have to kill each opponent one by one, and it would take longer, but he estimated he could kill them all without even catching his breath. At this moment, Tao Yu alone faced the core of hundreds of experts from the 6 major factions, yet he seemed to have the upper hand in terms of momentum. It was as if he alone had encircled the elite forces of the 6 major factions. Although a powerful offensive effect was costly, the impact and subversion it brought on a mental level were matchless, an instance of getting what you pay for. The elites of the 6 major factions all had grim expressions on their faces. Kong Ji was gasping for breath, his trembling palms barely able to hold the Zen staff steady. Looking at his bent Zen staff, watching those blood dragons that Tao Yu had retracted, and seeing Tao Yu's aura that seemed completely unaffected, his face couldn't help but show a hint of bitterness. He originally thought Zhang Sanfan was unmatched under the heavens, but the emergence of the worlds beyond made it clear what it meant to have a frog in the well perspective. Benefactor's divine skill is unparalleled. This time, we admit defeat. Thank you for your mercy. Being coerced and yet having to thank the coercer. As long as one is powerful enough, anything they do is justified. Chapter 253, Handling the Aftermath. How much better it would have been to say this earlier, instead of us having to beat you up. Tao Yu shook his head and reabsorbed the sky full of blood dragons back into the bloody mist. After recalling the blood dragons, he calculated he had about a quarter of his endurance left, but due to one proof forever proof, there wouldn't be a significant impact until one element was completely depleted. We were deluded, having believed Cheng Kun's nonsense. It's all our fault. Cheng Kun deserves to die. The 5 elders of Kong Tong were sitting collapsed on the ground at this point, looking at Xian Yutong's dead body, and began to hastily admit their wrongdoings. They had to admit it, or else. If he's going to go back and attack our master, that would be truly disgraceful. We came here seeking support, only to be beaten to this state. If we go and attack our master, wouldn't that be total disaster? That Cheng Kun really committed heinous crimes, he deserved to die. It was all him, causing so many years of bloodshed in the martial world. My purse went missing on the way here, it must have been that scoundrel who stole it. My undergarments are also missing, it must be him. I fell off my horse, it was definitely him attacking in secret. The people from the 6 major sects unleashed their verbal tirades against Cheng Kun's body, condemning him with words. They truly had the capability to kill all of us. Even piling up on him turned out to be useless. The daunting words of the monk Kong Ji turned out to be true. The only one who was silent, holding the heavenly sword with a pale face due to the enormous expenditure of inner strength, was the abbess Miju. Others might have been wronged, but her senior brother had been infuriated to death by Yang Xiao, and her most talented disciple had been defiled by Yang Xiao, giving birth to a bastard child. Another person who felt the indignation was Yin Luo of the Wudang. Being one of the victims, he was still kept in the dark at this moment. And 5 of the 7 heroes of Wudang had been tied up by the 3 blood dragons, now drained of both blood and energy, leaving him no choice but to watch Yang Xiao helplessly, without any means to intervene. On another note, once Song Yuanxia recovered a bit of his inner strength, he and Zhang Wuji recognized their blood relation. With this new familial connection, the atmosphere on the scene softened considerably. On the other hand, Yang Xiao and others were still unable to snap back to reality for a long time. Not to mention them, even Fu Yi, who had experienced the strength of Tao Yu's Qi Wall, and Shi Zhuoji had never imagined their sect hierarch was so powerful. With the show of strength from his Qi Wall, they could accept their hierarch displaying such power. The key issue was that they could not understand how the hierarch, after displaying such divine might, could still appear unruffled, without so much as blushing or panting, which was terrifying. Why should it be only your hierarch? He also entered our Yang hierarch's secret chamber, he's our hierarch too. Yang Xiao argued with a sense of righteousness, despite being injured. You're talking nonsense. The hierarch came from our side, your hierarch is him. He's also very powerful, having reached the 7th level of the Great Shift of Qunkan already. Fu Yi and Shizuoji stared at each other. But upon hearing that Zhang Wuji had reached the 7th level of the Great Shift of Qunkan, Yang Xiao's expression softened a bit. Although there was a gap compared to the 31st generation hierarch, it wasn't too bad. It seemed like it wasn't unacceptable. Just that it was a bit hard to swallow after the comparison. Alright, let bygones be bygones. I've already told you about the abyss, try to integrate all your strengths as much as you can. Tao Yu casually interrupted the argument between Yang Xiao and Fu Yi, then casually mentioned that Cheng Kun was able to bring so much gunpowder and stir up trouble in the martial world over the years. I suspect he had other backing. It wasn't us. Kong Ji blurted out in shock, quickly disassociating himself, which made Tao Yu give him a sidelong glance. What a timid soul. I'm not talking about you. I think it's the imperial court. The Yuan dynasty is cruel and has long wanted to put our martial world in order. If they hadn't been held up by the Tejua people, they would have probably dealt with us long ago. The 5 elders of Kong Tong hastily picked a scapegoat and they hit the nail on the head by sheer fluke. Indeed, it's quite possible, so there might be other ambushes waiting for you on your way back. The world had already changed drastically. Tao Yu felt that even besieging Bright Summit was done out of habit, but capturing the experts of the 6 major sects might not go as usual. Now, the Yuan army is battling with the Tejua on the steppes, and it's unclear how much strength Xiaomin still has in her hands. If she doesn't have enough forces to detain the experts of the 6 major sects, it's not impossible that she would simply have them all killed. But Tao Yu didn't really care about the well-being of these high-level experts from the 6 major sects. The key consideration was that, next door, it's divine sculpture, and here, it's heaven's sword. Martial artists, or at least the genuinely skillful ones, probably wouldn't number more than 10,000. In fact, these people are the true essence and wealth of these 2 worlds. Since he had already made the effort to subdue the experts of the 6 major sects, Tao Yu thought he should get some sort of return on his efforts and not let them be wasted. If they were all killed on the way back, it would truly be a case of the chickens flying and the eggs breaking. Tao Yu had spent too much time traveling to the western regions. After sorting things out here, he still had to make a trip back to the present day, and he also needed to settle the Titan's business on the return journey, so he didn't want to waste too much time on Xiaomin's attack on the 6 major sects. Does sect hierarch Tao have any advice? Kong Ji clasped his hands together and earnestly sought guidance. No matter whether it was as his opponent had said, he needed to be tactful enough to partake in the conversation. After Zhang Sanfan became unbeatable, when facing this real person Zhang, they had been just as cautious. And now, a more ferocious figure had appeared. What a calamity! My suggestion is that Wuji and I accompany you on your journey back, and then let's capture the Yuan official in charge. Wouldn't that solve the problem? Brilliant! Brilliant! The monk Kong Xing also expressed his admiration from the side. This sort of empty flattery left Tao Yu a bit speechless. Had he said something profound? But indeed, such words could only be confidently spoken by Tao Yu after he had demonstrated his divine might. Anyone else saying them would indeed be laughed at. Let's rest briefly and then set off. I have some things to attend to when I return. Tao Yu didn't allow the battered folks from the 6 major sects much time to heal their wounds. Then he turned to Shizuoji and said, I'll leave this place in your care. Later, I'll arrange some tasks for you all. We follow your orders, sect hierarch. Below Bright Summit, on a high ground with a vast view, stands a desolate area with only a few sparse weeds. A young lady on horseback is surveying the landscape ahead amid a crowd of people attending to her, like stars surrounding the moon. The girl on the horse is exceptionally beautiful and possesses an innate noble elegance. She is Xiaomin, specifically in charge of martial world affairs. Currently, she's accompanied by martial artists such as Fan Yao, disguised as a suffering monk, the Xianming elders, and the 8 heroes of divine archery. Behind her is nearly 1,000 cavalry from the steppes. Nearly 1,000 of these cavalries are elite. Actually, if discussing this force alone, facing either the 6 major sects or Ming cult would be rather awkward. The Ming cult's 5 elements banner alone would give them a tough fight. However, after successfully inciting conflict between the 6 major sects and Ming cult, leading to the siege of Bright Summit, this force becomes super powerful for mopping up the aftermath. Moreover, with the 10 fragrances tender muscle powder, a top-tier poison targeting martial artists, if they could catch them off guard and seize the initiative, the scattered 6 major sects would have no chance of escape. Chapter 254 Zhao Min. Cheng Kun really knows how to boast. Having waited quite a while without seeing the fireworks from Bright Summit, Zhao Min seemed to let out a light chuckle. Although Cheng Kun was actually quite important under her command, Zhao Min didn't really like the man. There was a feeling that she couldn't quite keep him under control. Commandery Princess, since there has been a problem on Cheng Kun's end, should we temporarily retreat? Crane Pen Elder from the Xianming Elders asked with hands clasped together. It's fine. Even if Cheng Kun has failed, the 6 major sects have already started fighting with the Ming cult. Once a conflict breaks out, it's not something that can be stopped at will, neither side should expect to escape unscathed. A confident smile appeared on Zhao Min's charming face. If the conflict hadn't erupted, there might still have been a chance to stop it. Now that it had blown up, it would only escalate the tension. At least, Cheng Kun was still somewhat useful in stirring up the trouble. They're coming. Mounted on her horse, Zhao Min saw the troops coming down from Bright Summit. A trace of surprise also appeared on her pretty face. Strange, why do they all seem wounded? Is the Ming cult really that strong? The Ming cult is strong, but they shouldn't be able to completely overpower the experts from the 6 sections. At this moment, Crane Pen Elder was equally astonished. But now wasn't the time to worry about that. Regardless of which side had a Pyrrhic victory, there was no difference in the result. The Tiju in the northern plains are too rampant. They are strong because of their experts. We don't have time to take it slow this time. Capture them all, submit or die. There was a hint of iciness in Zhao Min's voice. Currently, the Yuan dynasty was troubled both internally and externally. The Tiju's capability in military arrays could not be compared to theirs. They were still fighting in a scattered form as roving soldiers, incomparable to the highly organized Yuan army that had absorbed various strengths. Moreover, it seemed that the Tiju also had to face threats coming from behind them. It was uncertain why they had suddenly increased their blockade. All the scouts intending to cross the plains had vanished without a trace. One couldn't help but wonder what the specific situation was further north in the Tiju steppes. 2211. So even though the Tiju had numerous experts, and Marshal Venerate was terrifyingly powerful, having gathered a large following even among the Yuan forces, the battlefield still favored the Yuan army. The opponent could only continue to assassinate their upper echelons to alleviate pressure. Because on the other front, it seemed Marshal Venerate couldn't always stay put. Meanwhile, they have always been spreading rumors like we have the bitterly cold Xianming elders, bluffing and creating confusion among the opposition, deterring them from organizing a concentrated attack on the capital from 1,000 miles away. Even so, Zhao Min knew that this standoff couldn't last forever. The personal combat strength of the Tiju's soldiers was not weak, and any deficiency in their battle array could be learned and imitated. But the training of those experts was not something that could be achieved overnight, and as time passed, it was bound to become increasingly disadvantageous for the Yuan forces. They could only maintain the upper hand now because the Tiju's original enemies were restraining them. She had to cut through the chaos decisively. Otherwise, once the Tiju made peace with their enemies and agreed to invade the south together, then it would truly be the end. Although she was already aware that the masters from the Central Plains martial world were much inferior to those from the Tiju region, there was no other option. They had to be used as a stopgap, with their sheer numbers providing an absolute advantage. Commandery Princess, be careful. Something's coming. You should retreat first. However, just at that moment, one of the 8 great divine archers spoke up with a serious look and a grave voice. All 8 of them simultaneously drew their arrows and knocked them onto their bowstrings, beads of sweat suddenly breaking out on their foreheads. This caused Zhao Min to pause for a moment, as several other experts also noticed the figure darting out from the midst of the 6 major sects. Just a single point by that figure would cover a distance of several meters, almost as if shrinking the earth to inches. Every touch left behind an afterimage. Not good. Commandery Princess, be careful. It's very likely a Tiju expert. Zhao Min originally wasn't too concerned. Surrounded by masters and backed by over 1,000 elite troops, what could a single person do? Yet she had just managed to discern that point when she looked again and found that the figure was already halfway to her. She then urged her horse into retreat. By the time she started falling back into the protective ring of the army and many experts, the distance between them had already closed to just over 100 yards. Indeed, a live target. From this distance, Tao Yu could easily see Zhao Min's features. Her skin was smooth as jade, tender as though it had been congealed, with an exotic, seductive charm. But her moves were just too ruthless, prone to stirring up trouble. Guard the carriage. Protect the commandery princess. Tao Yu's speed was indeed unexpectedly fast, and by the time everyone reacted, the mass mobilization of over 1,000 troops was a beat too slow. At the moment they began to move, a cheerful voice had already spread across the area. Since everyone has come, why not stay for a chat? Before the man arrived, his voice was already there, the sonorous attack that made the soldiers on the scene feel their chi and blood roiling, leaving them dizzy and disoriented. The originally tight formation started to falter. The initial dispatch was abruptly interrupted and put on hold. The martial arts masters protecting Xiaomin were all horrified. What a terrifying audio technique, what a horrifying inner strength. It could influence so many people. Fan Yao, who had disguised himself as an ascetic monk, was equally shocked. He had been quite worried about the 6 major sects laying siege to Bright Summit, but due to a lack of manpower, he had never found the opportunity to leave the group. Now, seeing the sect members descending from Bright Summit and suddenly facing such an enigma, he was also shocked. What kind of lightness skill was this, and what was this long-range audio attack? Besides those mystical Tao experts that were passed around in legends, were there really such great masters in the world? Could it be that the rumors of the martial venerate turning into the Great Sun were also true? Impossible, right? Fan Yao had received invitations to go north, but as he was an undercover agent, he had directly refused, having only heard some rumors about Tao experts. To him, these rumors were as laughable as mythological tales. He thought he knew the limits of martial artists in the martial world. But who would have thought that he would personally witness it now? But since he was also a disguised spy, he naturally wouldn't exert himself at this time, and was indifferently loafing at the side. In an instant, Tao Yu had arrived before them, surrounded by a steam that glowed red as fire, leaping like a flood dragon, his red chi wall deflecting some of the incoming powerful arrows from above, diving down with several blood dragons in tow. The resounding dragon's chant left everyone momentarily stunned as they watched the blood dragons rush into the crowd. What is this devilry? The eyes of the 2 elders of the Xianming sect bulged out, and soon they joined hands to strike a Xianming palm towards the blood dragons in defense, their chilly palm energy covering the blood dragons. But this time, Tao Yu had no intention of holding back, having fully recovered thanks to the nutrient paste. He was completely different from the state he was in on Bright Summit. The blood dragons rampaged without concern for the cost. With the addition of fist intention, the chilliness of the Xianming palm hadn't even approached before it was weakened by a third, and then shattered by the robust blood gang in an instant. Rushing towards the Xianming elders. Their palm energy having made contact, the sudden psychic shock made them feel as if the blood dragons had entered their minds and stirred chaos. It even gave them a sensation of withering and decay within their bodies. As their spirits were captured and their defensive inner strength collapsed, in the next moment the Xianming elders were struck head-on by the blood dragons, exploding into a shower of fragments. Fan Yao, who had been dragging his feet a tad slower, was also scared out of his wits upon seeing the miserable state of the Xianming elders. Not daring to confront them, he thought only of fleeing. But how could his running compare to their flying? He was soon sent flying, blood spraying from his mouth. However, in mid-air, Fan Yao's face showed a bit of confusion as if he wasn't badly harmed. Although he was flung away, the force had been completely defused, entirely different from what had happened to the other 2. Stop! Put down the commandery princess. It must be said that Xiaomin was quite adept at command, even though Tao Yu displayed such might that stunned the thousands of soldiers. Still, among the divine archers, some managed to shout out in reprimand. But what they got in return was Tao Yu sweeping a blood dragon back with his hand, which sent them tumbling away, vomiting blood. They might be good at archery, but their strength was just about passable. Everyone, stop! Do not offend the gentleman. Contrarily, it was Xiaomin, the commandery princess being held by the scruff of her neck by Tao Yu, who in the face of danger did not succumb to panic, softly chiding her subordinates. Only after everything was settled did she turn her face, showing a charming and radiant smile to Tao Yu. I am Xiaomin, and I have seen the gentleman, she said. May I inquire the honorable sir's name and which part of the world he hails from? Hearing Xiaomin's words, Tao Yu raised his eyebrows in surprise, but then thought it to be reasonable. His style did seem a bit out of place in this world. Great Tang's martial force was considerable, but it didn't have these kinds of specialized effect attacks. Quite clever, but it's too troublesome to explain. For now, have them regroup and follow me, he said. At the gentleman's command. Regroup, heed the gentleman's orders as you would mine, Xiaomin said decisively, prompting Tao Yu to take another look at her. Actually, Tao Yu personally hadn't liked this character very much, but he had to admit that even now, with them on opposite sides, her conduct was beyond reproach. Her swift adaptability might even surpass that of the Shaolin monks. Chapter 255. Placement. Tartars, indeed. Taoist Tao truly descends like a deposed immortal, leaving no stone unturned. Amitabha, sect hierarch Tao has saved our 6 major sects from a dire situation, otherwise our return journey would have been difficult to conclude peacefully. Earlier it was said that Cheng Kun had planted explosives, now it turns out you've saved us twice. Considering you've spared us once before, this would be the 3rd time. The experts from the 6 major sects, despite being injured, could not help but continuously praise Tao Yu as they watched him capture Zhao Min and approach with over 1,000 cavalrymen from the plains. Zhao Min, who was being held by Tao Yu, immediately assessed his general situation. The sect hierarch of the Ming cult? Wasn't it Yang Dingtian before? A new sect hierarch. Seeing the pitiful state of the people from the 6 sects, she wasn't really surprised. After all, the opponent had previously broken through their formation alone and aimed straight for the enemy's leader amid thousands of troops. It was natural for the 6 sects allied with the Ming cult to be thoroughly battered. They hadn't lost many men, indeed, as they said, they were spared. However, Zhao Min still displayed a naive expression and delicately said, "Taoist Tao, what is your purpose in descending to the mortal world this time? Whatever you desire, the court can satisfy it: wealth, beauty, status, power. I want you." Tao Yu found Zhao Min's eagerness baffling, but upon hearing his words, she merely paused for a moment and then gently replied with a blush coloring her face. "If it's for Taoist Tao, naturally, it's possible. If I wanted beauty, I would only need a handmaid to clean the latrines. That works too." Tao Yu, looking at the serious Zhao Min, was somewhat surprised. Well done, she was willing to rise and fall accordingly. But he hadn't agreed to anything, and it didn't matter if she offered herself willingly. The experts from the 6 sects, hearing such conversation, also showed changing expressions, fearing that Tao Yu might be beguiled by the young temptress, yet they dared not voice their concerns. Many of them were sending meaningful glances in the direction of Mi Ju, whose disciples included quite a few beauties. But clearly, with Mi Ju's temperament, even if she understood their intentions, she would do nothing about it. "Stop your senseless chatter. The problem is temporarily resolved, and if you find yourselves in trouble again, don't blame me for it," Tao Yu said, waving his hand impatiently at the people from the 6 sects. "Amitabha, sect hierarch Tao is merciful. We are injured and fear court ambushes. May we seek temporary shelter in your sect?" One of the 5 elders of Kongtong had a flash of inspiration and made a request. "That is possible. I intend to unite the martial world to confront this unprecedented major upheaval. Perhaps you can arrange for your disciples to send a message back to your sects using carrier pigeons." Tao Yu glanced at them, which was met by silence. How could the martial sects wish for another figure above them, like a retired emperor? They were already suffocated enough under Zhang Sanfan's presence. It wasn't merely a matter of strength. "There's no need to rush your decision. However, the other world, including Shaolin and your ancestors, is currently facing the calamity of the Titans. Are you willing to lend a hand?" Calamity of the Titans? Our ancestors? The elite of the 6 sects looked at each other, not knowing what to do. In the end, it was Kong Ji who sighed softly. "Since it involves the ancestors from a century ago, we must do our utmost to help. It's just that our sects may worry about our safety. No matter, arrange for a few uninjured disciples to go back and send the message. If they are also willing to provide support, the Ming cult will open the doors of convenience and let them travel through secret passages to get here. The situation in your northern regions is worse than you imagine." Tao Yu laughed lightly. On the way, he had asked Zhao Min about the situation with the Tiju, and presently, both sides did not realize their own strength. The Tiju had temporarily stabilized due to their enemies and the original balance, together with the forces from the Yuan court. But it was uncertain how long the stability would last. Holding back a large army might be easy, but it certainly wouldn't stop a few strong individuals from the Tiju from slowly infiltrating. The only good news was that the number of Tiju experts wasn't large, and as long as they were not led by top-notch leaders, relying on the numbers of the Central Plains martial world, they could barely manage, given that the enemy could not deploy en masse. Moreover, for now, posturing and the original mutual checks and balances seemed effective, there were no signs of southern-bound Tao experts. However, it was unclear how long this peace would last. But as long as it wasn't a large army approaching, the situation wouldn't be excessively grave. The threat of the Titans required immediate attention and resolution. Good, we will recover for a while and are willing to set out alongside the forces under Taoist Tao. The elites of the 6 major sects ultimately made their decision. Though they were shameless in many ways, orthodox sects was almost becoming a derogative term. However, it's undeniable that, on matters of great justice, most of the time they still met the standards. Otherwise, by directly defecting to Yuan court, they would have certainly obtained wealth and honor. This time, they did not disappoint. Tao Yu nodded in approval. As for their unwillingness to integrate the martial world, he didn't care too much about that, as long as they were willing to fight the Titans together, that was enough. The matter of integrating the martial world could be discussed later. In this era, the communication capabilities were truly lacking. With the stringent requirements for carrier pigeons, and relying solely on fast horses, a round trip of communication from the western regions to the central plains would take at least 2 to 3 months. At such efficiency, it was indeed too early to talk about integration. However, Tao Yu was just setting the stage for now. In terms of the martial world, it would probably still fall on the rich young ladies to arrange everything. He was just a minor shareholder receiving dividends. In this world, besides Zhang Sanfan's few martial arts techniques, all the worthwhile skills had already been acquired. The others largely overlapped with those from the divine sculpture world, so there was no urgent need. Relatively valuable were these mature martial artists. Whether it was for teaching, or assembling them to issue guns, the speed at which they could form combat effectiveness far exceeded that of ordinary development zone pioneers. If they were to learn some firearm skills, then facing the Tao experts, they might have some capacity to compete, right? In Great Tang, it should just be the high quality of inner strength, plus spiritual cultivation. Releasing true qi to continuously defend against bullets is probably not sustainable for long. Although the new development zone has been around for nearly 10 months now, just considering the relocation from the old development zone, and not accounting for the death rate, perhaps a total of around 30,000 pioneers have entered. But the pioneers who have managed to stay alive up to now are just over 10,000, most of them from the outer city, with only 1 or 2,000 from the inner city. If the core strength of the martial artists from the martial arts world could be integrated, they could actually outnumber the pioneers. As for the cost of arming them, the abundantly virtuous and beautiful one has only been in the zombie world for a little over a year, not to mention the weapons of the guard squads. Civil firearms could easily be picked up aplenty. Now in the new development zone, they are probably still mostly trying to arm the survivors nearby. Unfortunately, with the natural barrier of abyss and the obstruction of the sea, it will be difficult to transport regular people on a large scale in the short term. Being able to mobilize martial arts masters is already quite good. Tao Yu pondered, then sighed a bit. In the end, it was the primitive means of message delivery that was holding things back. In the zombie world, even after the apocalypse begun, with the help of radio broadcasts, survivors from places like Canada have slowly been migrating there. But in this martial arts world, Guojing has probably only just finished hosting the martial arts tournament. For Guojing to send a message to Dali, and then for someone to travel the long distance to Xiangyang, it would take as long as his current journey. Not bad, the training of the 5 Elements banner here is better than the other side, much more elite. Tao Yu learned about the current situation of the Ming cult from Yang Xiao. Because this world's Ming cult had already started a rebellion, they had real combat experience and training, so the capabilities of the 5 Elements banner were stronger than 100 years before. The Ming cult's overall strength was still growing positively, unlike the general decline in the martial world. Being able to swim against the current was also considered to be favored by fate. "You flatter us, sect hierarch," Yang Xiao replied with a smile. And Fan Yao, the bright right emissary who had been disguised as Xiaomin's master, who had spent many years undercover with a disfigured face but to little gain, was now back in his rightful place. Theoretically, there were now both the 31st and 34th generation sect hierarchs of the Ming cult. But Zhang Wuji in the original story didn't have any real intention to lead, he was pushed into the position against his will. Although he nominally learned the great shift of Quncan due to circumstance, when Tao Yu was around, he was just a mascot. Letting Yang Xiao call Tao Yu sect hierarch provoked some irritation among Fu Yi and the others. But after all, they were from the same sect. They said there was 100 years difference, but due to the actual exchanges after this passageway connected, There wasn't any noticeable generation gap. They were of the same origin, so integration was smooth. The situation is like this, including Zhao Min's side of 1,000 prairie cavalry, I have an additional 3,000 people. I need to leave the abyss for a while, so in the short term, try to get people from the Five Elements banner to take charge of them. Accompany the elites of the six sects to support Xiang Yang, and along the way help the chosen ones slay the titans. Tao Yu made arrangements on this side. While he was gone, things here couldn't just halt, he'd see if he could solve the transportation issues when he returned. They should set out without waiting for him, it would be more suitable for him to catch up later. Zhao Min had already had a mental seed implanted, so even if she was only pretending to be obedient, the details engraved by soul transfer would teach her proper behavior, and there was no need to worry about her causing trouble in the short term. As for Cheng Lixiu, it went without saying. Yang Guo, Mikasa, and Aaron, due to their age and experiences along the way, were almost like little fanboys and fangirls. The stronger their capabilities, the better. On the other hand, the thoroughly honest Zhang Wuji felt a bit difficult to approach. But that didn't matter, having some positive feelings on the surface was enough. The personas of these chosen ones were anyway more dependable than the pioneers. Even considering Yang Guo and the rest, Tao Yu didn't treat them as subordinates. By treating them with sincerity, they would reciprocate in kind. Jack was the best example. Chapter 256. Return. Because he still had over 100,000 Yuan Force points, Tao Yu stayed for an extra half a month, mainly to integrate the forces of the Ming cult and the elite of the six major sects as well as the grassland soldiers from both sides. Initially, relying solely on Boyan and the people from the 104th Training Corps, it was only possible to keep them in check through the personal awe inspired by Tao Yu. If he left for a long time, it was uncertain what would happen. But now, with the addition of the followers of the Ming cult and the elites of the six major sects, there was no doubt that things got much better. Apart from a few exceptions like Zhu Kongba, the loyalty of the Ming cult from top to bottom was truly unquestionable. Now, faced with the great changes in the world, giants here, Tiju there, he somehow managed to smooth things out in this half a month's time. I'm not out to claim kingship or seek blindly obedient followers, I'm just preparing to make dividing the money easier when the time comes. Tao Yu's needs were actually not that high. Even with the current use of soul transfer combined with the taming technique, he couldn't ensure 100% loyalty and reliability, so he wouldn't bother with so many thankless tasks. After all, absolute loyalty is a paradox too hard to achieve. Close enough is good enough. 4,000 grassland cavalrymen, already having sufficient military training, under the control of Ming cult followers, would become an unmistakable force when equipped with firearms. This was something even a million Yuan Force points couldn't buy. I'll be gone for a while, and in the meantime, it's all on you. If you do well, when I return after dealing with the titans, I might even make a trip to the grasslands. Tao Yu looked at Zhao Min, who was meekly standing by his side. This little demoness was capable, but even though he had implanted a mental seed in her, Tao Yu still didn't trust her. In comparison, Cheng Lixiu, who could communicate telepathically, was far more reliable. However, unfortunately, Cheng Lixiu was too simple, a naive female hero incapable of handling such a big situation. Therefore, in the end, Tao Yu let Fu Yuzi assist, Zhao Min provide strategies, and Cheng Lixiu make the final decisions. Yang Guo was smart too, and together with Armin as Cheng Lixiu's counselor at her side, they generally managed to create a balanced situation that was unlikely to cause any issues in the short term. Really, do I have to see your heart laid open before I can trust you? Zhao Min's expression was coquettish and captivating, her beauty and cuteness beyond description, and her tone was tender and soft, seemingly carrying a hint of resentment. Stop that act in front of me. Tao Yu didn't care whether Zhao Min was sincere or not, as long as she was willing to work steadily, he could treat her as genuine. Humph, there will come a day when I'll make you believe, Zhao Min said spiritedly, her eyes swirling mischievously as if pondering something. Safety first, don't take too many risks hunting titans. This trip south is mainly to support Xiang Yang, focusing on defense. I'll come as soon as I've finished my business. I understand, don't worry, I guarantee not a hair will be harmed on the heads of the important ones, Zhao Min assured. Tao Yu always felt that the more dominant he was, the more excited she seemed to become, it felt weird, perhaps Zhao Min was a masochist. Climbing Zhongnan, going to the western regions, even participating in the siege of Bright Summit by the six major sects, it seems like I've been through a lot, but in reality, most of the time was spent on the road. Tao Yu arrived at a room on Bright Summit, seemingly letting out a sigh. Starting from Shaolin, it had been almost 2 months on the road. In fact, resolving the problems was really fast, the integration afterward took less than 20 days. I need to find some way to get something that can fly, preferably like the wealthy young ladies. Tao Yu pondered in his mind. But that thing would certainly be expensive. This made Tao Yu turn his attention to another of his skills. Corpse refining art. This ability required an initial 2,500 deification points, and 50,000 for the second deification. Even for the skill-based techniques, Tao Yu had only a few like flicking finger magic and dragon's regret queued up for consideration, and those were relatively low priority. The purely external power of the corpse refining art initially held little interest for him. But now, traveling was too problematic. Without the ability to fly, he would spend most of his time on the road upon entering the abyss. Sigh, it probably has something to do with the advantages I'm aware of, so I have a clear goal. A regular pioneer would likely spread their net slowly and widely and wouldn't have such a great need, Tao Yu sighed internally, but it was precisely for this reason that his profits were so high. Still, even with a second deification of the corpse refining art, it's not certain I could find non-human creatures. The most reliable thing would still be a flying device. If I can't afford the same model, maybe a cheaper one could suffice? I've integrated a lot of dojo masters here, and I wonder if Sun Shiking has visited Shaolin Temple in this time. As Tao Yu reached this point in his thoughts, he also chose to return. Sizzle. As Tao Yu re-emerged, what met his eyes was his room, which had undergone a complete makeover. The walls were now wooden panels, and the bed had been crafted out of solid wood, even fitted with a soft mattress. The windows had all been replaced with glass, allowing a view of the grey, overcast sky. Returning this time gave Tao Yu a slightly different feeling than before. He felt a faint pressure on his body. Although it wasn't strong, Tao Yu indeed sensed a slight constraint. Is this the protection of the present world? I didn't expect I could actually touch a hint of it already, though it's still not obvious. Does this mean my strength could be considered quite formidable now? Tao Yu felt somewhat emotional. In many of the Abyss's fragmented worlds, there were also restrictions from their own world's will, and even more so in the present world. It was probably meant to reduce the damage to the present world. The stronger one was, the stronger the constraint one would face. Tao Yu had always thought such matters were far from him, but he didn't expect to feel it upon returning home today. But for now, it's just a feeling, it has no impact on me yet, I'm still not strong enough. Tao Yu merely moved his hands and feet slightly and adapted completely. In fact, his strength now was such that going all out in the present world would hardly be affected. This world's will constraint felt to Tao Yu like air resistance. The faster one went, the more significant the effect. You could feel it when sprinting 100 meters, and there were different levels of resistance for cars, planes, and rockets. Strength still begets strength, but the stronger one was, the greater the cost. Tao Yu felt that for him now, it was like the wind resistance one faces when walking. It existed, but it was negligible. Tao Yu stepped out the door and saw his father, Tao Long, chatting with a neighbor at the door. On the other hand, his third brother, who was always at home, was nowhere to be seen. Considering the time, he should have fully recovered and started working with the security team. It was somewhat unexpected to run into his father again. Little Seventh is back, hey? It's been almost 3 months this time. When Tao Long saw Tao Yu, a look of joy appeared on his face. Are you off work again today? Hey, I don't know what our captain found out, but now he's assigned me a really easy job, and I've got a lot more vacation time. Tao Long grinned, his income had increased quite a bit. Now, he alone was earning 500 Yuan Force a month, and the key was that it was easy. Your mom too, she's gone to help with the kids at your fourth brother's place. Tao Yu also had a moment of realization upon hearing this. Ever since his grade A talent had been revealed, his parents' jobs had already become much easier and safer, with no more worries about being cannon fodder. Tao Yu was considering finding them even more comfortable jobs after moving to the inner city. He didn't expect things to have already changed in this way. I'm planning to find an opportunity to move to the inner city. I can now apply for a quota for you guys. What do you think? As soon as Tao Yu finished speaking, the nuts in Tao Long's hand dropped to the ground, his face a picture of astonishment. Move to the inner city? Now? Isn't that a bit too soon? Tao Long, who had gradually gotten used to his son's miraculous abilities, was once again feeling uncomfortable. Inner city. From the perspective of the mud-legged dwellers of the outer city, it was a place where even the air was filled with sweetness. Many would take pride in just obtaining a temporary work card that allowed them to enter during the day to work. After Tao Yu's talent was discovered, Tao Long had felt that his son, with his grade A talent, would definitely be able to move to the inner city. If things went smoothly and with a bit of luck, maybe he too could visit the inner city within his lifetime. But to think that in less than a year, you're talking about moving in? What exactly did you manage to get on that side this time? The expenses in the inner city are too great, and forcibly moving in wouldn't be affordable. Let's continue to live here for now, it's comfortable. You should prioritize improving your strength and not always think about saving money. Tao Long ultimately forced himself to dispel that tempting thought, sighing deeply before giving Tao Yu heartfelt advice. Strength is the real capital. Let's leave it at that for now. I have some matters to handle, and we can talk about it later. Seeing the gaping mouth of the chattering neighbor next to him, Tao Yu didn't dwell on the matter any further. After staying for half a month longer and continuously accelerating his training, he now had less than 70,000 Yuan Force left. And because his meridians had been filled, he had to slowly widen them through meticulous effort, so the improvement was actually not as significant as when he initially invested tens of thousands of Yuan Force. Fortunately, he had almost accumulated 6 months of dividends. Perhaps the little tycoon and her group hadn't started yet, but there should still be something for Panda. He decided to first go to the mission hall to understand the situation and then figure out a way to contact the little tycoon. Chapter 257. Encounter. She's not here. Tao Yu looked at his watch, feeling a bit disappointed. The young heiress must have returned to the abyss. It's strange, but he actually found himself missing her after such a long time apart. The cleanliness around his home was truly remarkable, obviously well maintained, just like the roads leading towards the inner city. Tao Yu promptly donned his partner's outfit. Guess I'll head to the mission hall first. Tao Yu was somewhat surprised to see an increase in the number of security team members nearby, wondering whether Zi Chuan had arranged this intentionally, but it was a good thing. Something's not right. Tao Yu frowned slightly, suspecting that this was not merely because Zi Chuan wanted to improve the local security. With that, he approached 3 of the security team members nearby. The trio, who had already noticed Tao Yu in his partner's cloak, could recognize what it symbolized given the average knowledge level of the security team. They appeared somewhat reserved when Tao Yu approached, and as soon as they confirmed he was coming towards them, they straightened up considerably. May I know what brings the partner sir here? The leader among them took the initiative to ask. Has something happened around here? Why are there so many of you in this area? Tao Yu scanned the surroundings, spotting not only these 3 plainly visible members but also some undercover ones, and he vaguely saw more in the neighboring street. Sir, have you been away for a long time? One of the security team members cautiously countered with a question. Yes, just got back. Tao Yu didn't deny it, suggesting that something indeed had occurred recently. Well, the Chaoyang Society has been quite active lately, but they haven't done anything illegal, so we can only keep a closer eye on things to prevent any problems. The security team member frankly outlined the situation without probing why a mid-tier partner like Tao Yu had just returned from the outer city. This revelation took Tao Yu by surprise. The Chaoyang Society was always measured in their actions and indeed inclined to help people, regardless of any underlying thoughts or objectives they might have. Their reputation was quite good. Many desperate outsiders often sought help from them, and they would lend a hand where they could. The Chaoyang Society didn't simply dole out charity, they wouldn't give away Yuan Force directly, instead spreading their philosophy and leading by example. Moreover, the president of the Chaoyang Society had made it to the inner city and possessed considerable strength, reportedly a rare talent, which also contributed to their fame in the outer city. In fact, the Chaoyang Society's recent activities hadn't deviated from their usual approach, they merely expanded somewhat due to the extraordinary deeds of their leader who had entered the inner city. He challenged the head of the Longzi clan and won, securing an agreement to restrict the family members' conduct. After thanking the security members, Tao Yu continued towards the inner city, mulling over the events they had mentioned. The president of the Chaoyang Society was a peculiar guy, always peddling inspirational quotes. Lin Chao, that kid, really admired their president, and so did Tao Shi, although Tao Yu had never met him. All he knew was that the man had gained some renown in the inner city. But surprisingly, he had managed to defeat a clan leader within the inner city, which signified an impressive level of strength. I have some recollection, when the Kirin asked for a duel, he mentioned his family name. If the members of the Longzi clan are all of that nature, then indeed there might be many victims. Tao Yu pondered to himself. Having been to the inner city and seen variously modified street women, he could surmise that the character changes from hormone influences due to body modifications could be abnormal. Perhaps the Longzi clan's behavior is universally problematic. If that's the case, it's somewhat understandable why the Chaoyang Society's president pressured them into making constraints. However, unfortunately, he has probably attracted quite a bit of resistance from the forces within the inner city. As Tao Yu thought this, he sighed. When there's trouble, the society's leader genuinely intervenes. Although Tao Yu couldn't bring himself to do the same, it didn't stop him from acknowledging the effort. Maybe the society's president was strong enough to defeat a clan leader, but he likely also provoked a joint opposition from the inner city's forces. The increased surveillance by the security team in the outer city, ostensibly for protection and maintenance of order, could also be seen as searching for a pretext to take action. But for now, the Chaoyang Society seemed to be operating honorably and without shady dealings, not fearing being watched like this. This probably served more to apply pressure, reminding the society's president not to overstep his bounds. Not everyone in their society is like Lin Chao. Tao Yu was a bit concerned about his little brother, but then he remembered the boy wasn't even 18 yet and far from being a core member, just someone close enough to be considered for future involvement. At least for now, there was no immediate worry. Just as there are certain considerations for pregnant and nursing women, minors also receive a degree of protection. A boy doesn't need to worry about getting the short end of the stick. He has his own thoughts, and Tao Yu can't always act as his nanny. Being there to back him up in crucial moments is enough. I need to become stronger. Tao Yu stopped dwelling on these matters and hastened into the inner city. He tried to contact Wang Gaodan but found that he wasn't around either. However, this was quite normal. As a middle-rank partner, Wang Gaodan didn't just take on inner-city missions. He would also take abyss missions if the pay was right, and he had to periodically visit the abyss. Tao Yu didn't think much of it. He went directly to the task hall nearest to the South City Gate, which he frequented the most. Miss Mag, still looking so beautiful. Tao Yu greeted Miss Mag with a beaming smile. Having not seen her for several months, she seemed unchanged, still possessing a delicate face and vibrant actions brimming with yuan qi. Aha, it's you, is the shortcut money good? Miss Mag teased Tao Yu a bit when she saw him. Last time Tao Yu had his clothes mended by her after damaging his suit. Well, since it's a shortcut, of course it's good money. Tao Yu didn't mind the teasing, and what he said was mostly true. Are you here to take missions or to check messages? Let's check the messages first. Clad in the garment of a middle-rank partner, Tao Yu monopolized Miss Mag's exclusive service as soon as he arrived without causing any ripples among other partners nearby. It wasn't morning, and there were quite a few people in the hall, but middle-rank partners were still a minority. Let me see, you have 7 messages, I'll upload them to your wristband. Thank you. After importing the messages, Tao Yu found a corner of the hall to check them. 3 messages from Jack and 4 from Panda, almost 1 per month. Kid, you're really a hands-off manager, hey? But nothing much has happened recently, your company has been doing really well. Park Ji-hyun has great ability, her Crow squad is quite skilled, and Xiao Jian's group has also started to band together. A lot of survivors have come from the neighboring world, and they've even cut a path through the rainforest. I heard they're preparing to lay down a simple road so it might be reachable by vehicles in the future. Tommy and Judy are in love now, bless them, it's not bad that they can drive trucks together. Your company has started producing some consumables, but the quality is a little poor. Bullet manufacturing requires high craftsmanship, but I reckon there'll be money to be made once all the stock is used up. More people from the floating city have arrived, and the base's atmosphere feels a bit oppressive. Aside from the Sun's siblings sitting back and reaping the benefits, the others seem to be forming factions, and some of them have even approached me actively. But I've stayed neutral all along, only accountable to the Sun's siblings, haha. Jack's messages were just casual chat, with not much to report. However, the part about people from the floating city beginning to form factions within the base caught Tao Yu's attention. There was no doubt about the Sun's siblings' unique standing, not only possessing talent but also so many advantages from their head start. Now that the newcomers have begun to choose sides, the inner city pioneers in the base would probably have quite a headache. Remaining neutral often requires strength. Panda's messages were of a similar vein, roughly discussing the factory's progress and some sales conditions. Tao Yu estimated that without doing anything for 6 months, his dividends had already accumulated over 200,000. Though Tao Yu had made some initial investments such as obtaining information about the monster world and hiring Inshija the pilot, he had indeed been a hands-off manager afterward. Thanks to Sun Shiking's occasional help, his dividends were quite stable. Steady returns were coming in, and moreover, they were expected to increase. According to Panda's words, if it wasn't for Sun Shiking's support, he would have probably been forced to pick a side and even give up a lot of shares to avoid trouble. This world really does respect strength. Not all those from the floating city are easy to talk to like the little rich ladies. Tao Yu sighed, and then left a message himself, asking them to help him find the Sun's siblings if they had the chance, just to say he wanted to get in touch with them. He remembered what Sun Shiking said last time, so he didn't leave a message directly to the little rich ladies but rather took a more circuitous approach. It was like a more attentive subordinate making a report, so as to avoid unnecessary speculation. The confidentiality of messages in this task hall might be reliable, but that depended on who you were dealing with. When it came to people from the floating city, clearly there wasn't much secrecy to be had. One must always be cautious for now. However, just as Tao Yu had finished leaving his message, his watch received a transmission on a radio frequency. "Tao brother, you're back." Upon hearing it, Tao Yu recognized it as Panda's voice. It seemed Panda was also currently in this world. Perhaps having left a message caused the task hall to have a feedback mechanism, which informed him that someone had left a message. Then he tried to make contact through the radio frequency they commonly used. "Just happened to run into you, that's quite a coincidence." Tao Yu also felt somewhat emotional. It had been half a year since he last saw Panda. In the 10 months since the new development zone was established, they'd only exchanged simple communications, yet that was enough to maintain a stable relationship. At the end of the day, a relationship based on mutual interests was the most reliable. "Haha, that's quite timely, I haven't given you your dividend yet. Let's have a meal together, I know a fun place." "Sure, you're the host, you make the arrangements." Jack could pass messages too, but the little rich ladies probably wouldn't be back so soon. Having been on edge for so long, it wasn't bad to relax a bit. Chapter 258. Change. Why is it here again? Tao Yu looked at the familiar giant woman's advertising billboard, watched the constantly changing and flashing images, and observed the various streetwalkers below, her expression showing some speechlessness. As Wang Gaodan said, "This place is a landmark building, isn't it?" "Master Panda, you've returned from the abyss." Master Panda must have had a hard time in the abyss, do you want to let loose for a bit? "I haven't seen you for a long time, Master Panda." "Oh, it's General Manager Panda now, be careful with your words." Panda's towering figure of 2 meters 3 still stood out so conspicuously, causing a commotion among the girls nearby as he arrived. And he also saw Tao Yu, draped in a partner's cloak, right away and approached with a wide smile. "Brother Tao." After greeting Tao Yu, he waved his hand dismissively at the group of beauties, each with their unique charm. "I'm occupied today, so I'll spare you lot. Let's go." Tao Yu was not used to this kind of atmosphere, but with a quick glance he noticed that those greeting Panda had aesthetics that were in line. They were not the bizarre and misshapen female trolls or anything of that sort. Although Panda had alien implants, it seemed they hadn't affected his brain yet. After half a year without meeting, Panda's appearance hadn't changed much, he just seemed a bit plumper and more burly. Ever since he had started pulling his weight on that basic foundation and had even connected with Sun Shiking, his family would definitely continue to make long-term investments in him. Even the children of the inner city talk about returns on investment. For example, Wino's initial investment of 100,000 was something only children from families of senior middle-ranking partners in the inner city, apart from only children, could receive. A regular middle-ranking partner might be able to earn that money, but it would be rare for one to be able to provide it all at once unless they were like Tao Yu's parents who were very concerned about their child. Yet, with Wino's talent, facing that life and death crisis, his family's continued investment in him had dropped sharply. They cut their losses reasonably, and in times without mercy, they were truly merciless. In Panda's case, he not only had initial startup capital, but also carved out a considerable momentum for himself in the new development zone. Even if the returns weren't too substantial yet, his family would definitely be willing to continue to put in more funds. There was not only a bond of kinship but also an appeal for profits. Both were important. I remember Brother Tao headed north. Did you find any treasures? Share the wealth with your brother. Panda's skills had actually improved quite a bit, and he even believed he had caught up to Tao Yu, who had departed from the gathering area, considerably narrowing the gap. But his attitude remained as humble as ever. It didn't matter if he thought his skills were just a bit behind Tao Yu's, or if he was merely getting closer, or even if his skills had surpassed those of Tao Yu, or due to some mishap Tao Yu had lost all his abilities. As long as Sun Shiking still held their connection, he would always be Brother Tao to him. If it weren't for Brother Tao's influence, Panda himself might have had to pay a heavy price. Without the restraint of his elders in Floating City, some of the peers really saw no one in their eyes and behaved lawlessly. I did gain something. Why, have other explorers gone there to explore it too? Tao Yu also inquired. Although he had reported the matter with the martial arts manual and the deal was sealed, and he had received the money, and had already advised the pre-arranged coaches on what to say in case they met other pioneers, just to be safe. But he still wanted to know if any competitors were present. Pioneers indeed tended to disrespect rules. Tao Yu didn't want them to begin pillaging the Central Plains directly. Not many people went there. There's a 100-meter difference in elevation, making it challenging to transport goods in large quantities as our boats can't pass. Those who went close to the area might have been scavenging resources from the northern country, but I did hear recently that some pioneers in northern country encountered attacks from some strange native masters. Panda spoke of the rumors he'd heard. Pioneers from northern country could return to the modern world to pass on information, and people like Panda, who had connections in both the new development zone and the modern world, knew quite a lot. When Tao Yu heard about the pioneers coming across the native masters, he had his speculations. It might have been the indigenous taming technique experts Huang Rong had arranged to sweep the firearms. Although Canada didn't have as rampant gun ownership as the United States, it still had its own guard units, and one could still find a small amount of arms. It was just a few pioneers going to northern country to explore and transport goods who had encountered them. Recent information. Yes, not even 10 days ago. Some people are interested in those masters. I wonder if anyone has set out already. People willing to take risks in exploration are ultimately a minority when there are safer ways to make money. It's not just the risk that's the issue, but also the massive time cost involved. If the return on investment isn't high, it's effectively the same as losing money. At least, that's the case for the new development zones where you can make money everywhere. Moreover, in the unknown worlds, they don't know the limits of those powerful enemies. Based on the current intelligence, those guys are troublesome, very fast, strong, and accurate shooters. Tao Yu, have you been exploring that area recently? Panda was also curious. He knew that Tao Yu had been heading north. Tao Yu didn't seem to care too much, as he had already taken the biggest benefits in that area. There might still be some left, but at least in terms of one-time gains, no one could compare to him. I've indeed made some gains on my end, related to cultivation. In addition, I've prepared a batch of natives and have almost finished taming them. You can start getting ready with some cultivation and taming technique materials. Tao Yu had planned to continue his cultivation business in partnership with Panda. The company model was already well established and convenient to follow. Moreover, the understanding between them was solid, and both had their needs met. Hearing Tao Yu say this, Panda's eyes shone with excitement. Cultivation? Are they Yuan Force creatures? Or perhaps Yuan Force plants? Tao Yu was ready to give a straightforward answer, but upon hearing Panda mention Yuan Force plants, he paused, wondering if he had overlooked something. Images of exotic flowers and heartbreak grass began to form in his mind, and his eyes lit up involuntarily. Currently, there are two kinds of Yuan Force creatures with confirmed value in cultivation. As for plants, I've also heard some information. I'll look into that further. Tao Yu is awesome. Panda truly admired him deeply. Brave and meticulous, Tao Yu had always been a step ahead, starting from his days in transportation. It might not seem like a big advantage in terms of time, but he always managed to enjoy the sweetest first sip of the broth. The items will be found sooner or later. I'm just a step ahead, Tao Yu said indifferently. Tao Yu, you're too modest. Now, with over 10,000 people spread out in the new development zone and exploring nearby worlds, barely making a splash, only a few teams might venture into the northern country. Besides you, nobody else has dared to go down that waterfall into the sea. Panda said sincerely, acknowledging the need for adventure. Currently, the hottest job is still transportation, mostly because the barrier to entry is too low. But now, the focus has shifted away from Las Vegas and started to target other cities. Natives with truck driving and repair skills are in high demand. Panda, who had enjoyed the early profits of transportation, continued to manage his transport team for a share of the profits while also strategically pre-planning for machinery and production. Panda's father was a senior partner, and although he didn't run his own company and wasn't at par with other bosses of similar rank who controlled production resources, he had instilled a keen sense of business in Panda. Even though he could continue to put more effort into expanding his transportation team and maintain profits for a while longer, there was no need to waste more energy. Transportation is ultimately a downhill path. Controlling the production resources that can generate money on their own is the future. Factory machines exchange products for Yuan Force, but without discovering Yuan Force minerals nearby, the major source of Yuan Force is still cultivation, livestock breeding, and agriculture. Each world fragment has a limit to how much Yuan Force it can produce, but at least for now, the new development zone is far from reaching it. Actually, our company already occupies 3 excellent territories, a reservoir, grassland, and forest, each providing a solid foundation for the cultivation business. It's just a pity that, although the aliens grow quickly, they are not the easiest to raise at the moment. Panda expressed his feelings with a sigh. The price of alien skills had begun to crash and, after months of clearing them out and with the arrival of new big shots in the floating city, almost all the wild aliens had been eradicated. The rewards for hunting them had disappeared, and they had become dirt cheap. Although on a large scale, aliens could indeed harvest Yuan Force effectively, investing in them now wouldn't be cost-effective given the current need for development. It's like setting up a production line, the cost of producing initial units is extremely high. If Tao Yu has a better species, then of course, it's necessary to choose different tracks. Not bad at all, the places are already prepared. Here's a preliminary inspection report I submitted earlier. You can start preparing according to this, and next time I'll bring some samples for you. Tao Yu passed the previous inspection report to Panda, who readily accepted it. As the two chatted on the way, they arrived at the place Panda had mentioned. The sign outside was colorful, with a hodgepodge of characters. Although Tao Yu had been diligently using his watch to learn the language, those hieroglyph-like cursive scripts were still beyond his comprehension. But judging from the style below, it seemed to be a place for leisure, similar to a bar or KTV. Chapter 259. Competition. Panda had just entered the club with Tao Yu, pushing open the door to a blast of sequestered, booming music that filled their ears. The rhythmic rock-influenced music, paired with the flashing lights, stimulated everyone on the dance floor. On the central stage, a cybernetically enhanced beauty was tweaking the control panel. On the other side, a cat woman and a bunny girl were dancing an indescribable dance. The bunny girl, in particular, was left with barely a scrap of cloth on her body, her exposure so extreme it defied description. Panda, you're back from the abyss, is this your friend? I haven't seen him before, but he's handsome. As soon as they entered, a seductively dressed woman sauntered over with a sultry gait. Tao Yu's eyesight was excellent, a casual glance around revealed that many nearby were dressed in uniform, likely just wait staff. However, they seemed not to mind offering services beyond those of a typical server. As for the woman's compliment about him being handsome, Tao Yu chose to ignore it. Even though it was indeed the truth, he was still in his partner's suit, with a mask on. She must find the mask handsome. Table 3, bring 2 pitchers of Joy beer, and add a tropical fruit platter with an ice tower. That kid from last time will be coming too, don't stop him. Panda's hand, large as a fan, casually slapped the woman's back and, rather cheekily, he sniffed his fingers afterward. The scantily clad, seductive server didn't mind at all. Instead, she replied with a flirtatious giggle and a coy look. Oh, you're such a tease. Will that rustic little brother be coming too? Should I call Lena from last time? He's been missing her. I can bring another sister to join you guys. The server even gave Tao Yu a provocative look. Professional, indeed, and pleasing to the eye. But Tao Yu, who had been pampered by a wealthy woman, was unmoved by these offerings. No need, we've got some business to talk about. We'll call you when we need you. Although Panda's face was always smeared with a lascivious smile, his words left no room for negotiation. All right, got it. The server obediently complied, knowing full well the gravity of her job in such a place. In their line of work, many sisters who suddenly vanished were those who let something slip while keeping company with clients who had been drinking too much. There were plenty of people in the inner city with unstable minds. It was all too common for someone to lose control and spill things they shouldn't. Even an innocent eavesdropper might inadvertently spark trouble. Like that, she led Tao Yu and Panda to a booth by the side of the stage, a more secluded spot. Perhaps because it was still early in the afternoon, the dance floor was packed, but the rest of the venue was only around a quarter full. The booth Panda had chosen was near an unoccupied area. Once in the booth, Panda casually pressed something nearby. What was originally a semi-open booth was instantly sealed with a transparent membrane at the top and entrance, effectively silencing the deafening noise outside, proving to have exceptional soundproofing. And from the looks of it, the membrane seemed to be one-way, people on the outside probably couldn't see in. It was specially designed for privacy or quiet conversations. Nice setup here, someone else coming later? Asked Tao Yu with a smile. Haha, well, it's usually not for business talk, Panda replied, winking and raising his eyebrows suggestively at Tao Yu. The guy coming later, you know him. An outsider like you, with a grade A talent for balance control. His name is Zhang Lei, currently employed at our company, and he's quite the go-getter. Upon hearing this, Tao Yu remembered the guy he met 6 months earlier at a dinner with a few talented individuals from the development zone. He was the life of the party, articulate, and quite adept at navigating social situations. Oh, him. So he's moved to the inner city. His family has some assets in the development zone, and along with his own earnings, moving in by himself wasn't much of an issue. The only thing he lacks is some sophistication. Last time he was here it was quite embarrassing. Panda seemed to recall something amusing, a sly smile spreading across his face. But inside, he was surprised by Tao Yu's composure. Tao Yu had strength and connections, but being an outsider, his experience should have been limited. It appeared to be his first visit to such a place today, yet he wasn't the least bit swayed. Zhang Lei, when he first came, couldn't take his eyes off the sights, a young man in his prime unable to withstand such temptation. Having mentioned his grade A talent, he was quickly targeted by an experienced girl who plucked his title, borrowing his seat in the process. Coming here purposely, there's something you can't talk about elsewhere, right? Tao Yu casually mentioned it, making Panda sigh as well. Yet, now aside from the two from the Suns, there are 11 other big shots marking their territory everywhere in the new development zone. We took the early lead in our growth momentum and have been investing in various aspects, but with their move, the pressure on us is indeed quite substantial. Sun checking, even the young master can't keep them in check. Tao Yu was also somewhat surprised. Weren't there only 2 last time he came back? Now there were 11? Apart from the confirmation of the installation of the teleportation device, it seemed to have also coincided with a wave of birthdays. Of course, he can keep them in check. No matter what, they wouldn't dare to mess around in front of those 2, but the problem is that we can't bother them with every little thing. You know that as well. At this, Panda's face also showed a hint of helplessness. Having strong backing could solve many problems, but indeed, this support was not directly related by blood, and it was not something they could ask for anytime and anywhere. It was mainly used to deal with the direct pressure from the big shots in the floating city. But sometimes, pressure doesn't necessarily require their direct involvement. Yama is easier to meet than the troublesome minions. Down below, there were plenty of lackeys trying to curry favor, and it might even not be their intention, but some of the inner city pioneers also cared about certain benefits and began to wave the big flag. Both sides were waving the flag of the floating city, neither would easily show their full hand, so when they clashed, it came down to actual strength. Haven't you already brought quite a few people into the fold? They still come to bother us. The plots we've staked out have great locations, taking advantage of our first mover position, and hold tremendous potential. Panda now seemed somewhat pleased with himself. If the benefits weren't significant enough, they of course wouldn't provoke them without good reason. If it weren't for our numerous allies, we would have buckled under the pressure long ago. For now, it's a tug of war, and the issue isn't too serious, but it'd be even better if you could come back. I'm a bit too far away at the moment. Tao Yu didn't say something like I'll go and greet Sun Shiking because, just as Sun Shiking had initially said, Tao Yu couldn't really accept the overflowing kindness on her part. At least, involving himself in the current matter was inappropriate. That's fine, don't bother with the trouble of coming and going. Just keep haggling. In the worst case, we just concede a bit of the profit, it's not a big deal. Panda didn't have any intention of coercing Tao Yu to return. For now, it was enough that Tao Yu could stabilize the protection on the young master's side. For the other regular collisions, if they really couldn't hold up, then they simply had to back down a little. The other party wouldn't push too hard. Inner city kids, hey? Who are they? Send me the information, and I'll take a look. Tao Yu pondered for a moment, then his eyes deeply looked at Panda. Raising snakes and jade bees also accounted for a long-term trade. Even in the short term, after ramping up the business and selling part of the shares for money, that would bring in an enormous cash flow. Concede benefits? Concede what benefits? What if another wave comes next time? If it's just a competition of strength among inner city scions, and the floating city doesn't get involved, then there's nothing to fear. Once there's enough killing, no one will dare to covet any more. And Panda, who had just been venting to Tao Yu and wondering when he would return, suddenly felt all the hair on his body stand on end, shivering with goosebumps as if he was a fluffed-up cat. Seeing this reaction from the tall figure who stood at 2 meters and 30 centimeters, Tao Yu gave him an extra look. What's the matter? Are you allergic to some implant you got? At that moment, Panda looked at the hair standing up on his arm, a bit dazed, and then swallowed before saying. It's a type of insects killing intent detection, but since it's an implant, it's not very accurate, a bit of a nerve blade, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. However, it was at that moment when someone rang the bell outside. A cat girl carrying a tray arrived at the door with Zhang Lei in tow. Zhang Lei had acted quite smooth and adaptable at the dinner party last time. But this time around, he seemed somewhat ill at ease and seemed still not quite adjusted to the environment he had stepped into. That expression made Tao Yu feel a bit emotional. After all, he was a person who had come to the strange inner city, a foreign environment. Without the backing and confidence of his family, his self-assurance had diminished substantially. After all, he was just a 19-year-old, of the age when one usually starts university. Chapter 260, Grievance. Tao brother, it's been half a year. Upon entering and seeing Tao Yu, Zhang Lei's eyes lit up, and his originally restrained demeanor became much livelier. He knew that Tao Yu had connections with important figures in the floating city and that Tao Yu had already been an intermediate partner half a year ago. But no matter what, both of them came from the outer city, which made him feel a bit more at ease. Sit. Tao Yu said casually, his indifferent manner somewhat enviable to Zhang Lei. He's from the outer city too, yet he adapted much faster than myself. However, he turned to look at Panda, who teased him with a curse. What are you looking at me for? Tao brother already told you to sit. Panda's words startled Zhang Lei. You call him Tao brother too? Zhang Lei now knew that Panda's father was a senior partner, and his mother worked in the company's internal affairs department. Their family could be considered upper class in the inner city. Plus, with Panda's own talents not weak and his strength exceptional, he had also laid claim to his own piece of the pie. For him to address someone as Tao brother, even just to be polite, carried a completely different significance. But thinking about Tao Yu being able to talk with the magnates of the floating city, it seemed normal. Then a realization dawned on Zhang Lei. Da company had always managed to remain neutral, which was a representation of strength. There were rumors that young master's son had put out feelers. Perhaps it had something to do with Tao brother. It seemed that Tao brother kept a low profile on a daily basis, but he managed to accumulate enough points to become an intermediate partner in just 4 months, probably for this reason. But while he speculated in his mind, Zhang Lei was still quite astute on the scene. He played the role of a dutiful drink-pouring little brother, smoothly engaging in conversation about recent events. Tao brother is just impressive, entrusted with important tasks by the big shots. After this mission, you're bound to soar again. Panda gulped down a joy beer, a tasty drink with a fruity sweetness and candy-like fizz that was refreshing all the way to the stomach. Importantly, its ingredients were clean, free from any weird additives. I'm just doing errands for the big shots, but these breeding businesses aren't of their concern, so they fall into my lap. Tao Yu didn't go into specifics about inner strength and the dojo affairs, but since these matters would eventually be exposed, he briefly mentioned doing some work for the big shots, which also served to ostensibly strengthen his subordinate relationship with the rich kids. Being more frequently in communication, it would appear more normal. Haha, don't worry, of all our partners, we have a wide network. You've already given me the information, I'll take my time to look for suitable candidates. No rush with something that yields returns over a long period. After all, Panda had been in charge of Dada Company for so long. Although he was young, he possessed his own dignity. But at that moment, Panda suddenly froze, then furrowed his brows. Tao Yu followed his gaze outside, seeing a group of about 4 or 5 new customers laughing and heading towards the prime large booth with the best view. Accompanied by twice their number of girls, they squeezed into the booth, drinking merrily and acting willfully. Zhang Lei also looked over, then let out a low exclamation. It's Brew and his gang. Bad luck. Nothing unlucky about it, this is the real world, what could they dare do here? Panda snorted coldly but still hesitated before picking up his watch, considering whether to send out some messages. The 5 people opposite were skilled fighters from the inner city, with Brew's strength not below his own, and the other 4 had passed the assessment for intermediate partners. Even though in 10 months, the number of people who had passed the intermediate partner assessment in the development zone had increased, the total was probably just over 100, all absolute elites. If they ran into each other outside, although they wouldn't come to blows, it was more than normal to be bullied and ridiculed in words. And with their seating position in the spotlight, especially Panda's noticeable build, it would be hard not to be seen by them when leaving. Wait, are these the guys who are going to steal our business? Tao Yu actually became interested, his eyes lighting up. What a coincidence. This truly saved him trouble. Panda felt the hairs on his neck stand up again, and rubbed his arms as he said in an impartial tone. Indeed, there's some conflict. Brew was one of the earliest pioneers. He focused on the Forest 02 for a while and came back when he made no progress, which is why he's a step behind, but there's no doubt about his strength. Panda spoke softly. The others are also core members of their team, none of them weak. The core team is here. Mostly, yet. Seeing that Tao Yu had not dismissed his concerns, Panda hesitated before adding. Are you confident, Tao brother? The memory of Tao Yu effortlessly slaying assassin Taff was still vivid in his mind. Although after more than half a year, his own strength had also improved significantly, while the others had been exploring the new world and hadn't focused on practice, he still recognized Tao Yu's strength. It was very likely that Tao Yu was still above him even now. But if it was just that, their side, with 2 people plus Zhang Lei who was just like an outer city accessory, would still be at a disadvantage in public. Shall I call a couple more people over? Han Lin also just got back, but he's busy with blind dates, so I didn't call him. Chapter 261. Grievance. Han Lin was the strong man who broke off an engagement in the past, and later joined the company. His family owned a farm in the old development zone, and they were not short on clout either. No need. Tao Yu directly stretched out his hand to press the switch by his side, unlocked the compartment, and didn't wait for Panda, he straight up got up and walked over there. Since it was confirmed that all 5 were inner-city pioneers from the new development zone, there was nothing to worry about. If there was someone Panda didn't recognize, Tao Yu would have taken another look, but since they were all known, he could let loose a bit. Haha, let's drink up everyone. I don't think Panda and his group will last much longer. It's impossible for them to keep all 3 plots of land, they don't have the energy to keep it up. Right, listening to his tone last time, it seems they're ready to talk. We want the one next to the reservoir, it's good for farming and breeding, and if there are aquatic products, we can handle that too. Do we also need to collaborate with the water snakes? As they groped around with both hands, causing the women sitting beside them to giggle incessantly, they were also quite unabashed about starting to chat casually. After all, it was an open secret, although they were a step late in entering the scene, the strength they gathered was not weaker than that of Dada Company. As the proactive side, they had no fear of discussing things openly, unafraid of leaks. In any case, you have to rip one of the 3 pieces of land away, it's just a matter of which one you're willing to give up. Have you already signed an agreement? Doesn't matter. Can you ensure that you can successfully harvest from all 3 plots of land? Can you protect all 3 plots well? Not afraid of something happening one night? Not afraid of a fire? Not afraid of poison in the feed? That's impossible to imagine. It's better to divide one out and then focus on defending the remaining 2. The pioneers have the advantage of being first, but during the pioneering period, when the benefits haven't started snowballing and both sides still have the support of their current families, the challengers actually have no pressure. But at that moment, a figure wearing a partner's cloak had already arrived at the entrance of the booth, causing the few people inside to freeze for a moment. Shortly after, Bru looked at Tao Yu with a smile and spoke. "Friend, is there something you need?" Even in such a place, a mid-level partner had his own face value, easily exchanged for a smiling face. Tao Yu looked back, then stepped aside, revealing the enormous panda coming towards them, and then pointed at Panda saying, "I am a major shareholder of Dada Company. I've heard recently that you've been causing trouble." The aggressive tone Tao Yu used, coupled with the sudden appearance of Panda, really did make Bru's facial expression freeze for a moment. Running into Panda wasn't an issue, it's normal to encounter acquaintances in entertainment venues. But to use such an aggressive tone right off the bat, what was that about? This suddenly made Bru uncertain and suspicious of a potential plot. A provocation? And then have their own people nearby get enraged and want to do something? Tao Yu's assertiveness actually made Bru choose to swallow his anger and said in a deep voice. "Friend, in the new development zone, everyone competes on their own merits, and I don't believe I've seen you before." He was also worried that Tao Yu was someone from the old development zone. Seeing that they didn't initiate a confrontation, as Panda had described at the start, Tao Yu was momentarily taken aback. Even Panda and Zhang Lei were surprised. Could it be handled like this? Could it be they were intimidated? They sure knew how to play. Tao Yu noticed the script had gone awry and paused. But then he thought, no, if they're not picking a fight, can't I initiate one myself? After glancing around and spotting the beauties in their compartment, he pointed at them and said, "Now we're acquainted. It's such a waste for you to have so many ability points. Hand over half to me." As these words landed, the scene fell into an awkward silence. Even Panda, at the back, nearly stumbled over his own feet. "Man, aren't you drawing too much hatred?" "You." Bru's face flushed with a wave of red, as if it had warmed up, but he quickly suppressed his emotions again and raised his hand to stop his companions who were about to curse, taking a long breath before gritting his teeth and saying, "Fine, you ladies, go with him." After he spoke, Bru closed his eyes. This left Tao Yu a bit dumbfounded. He couldn't believe Bru could endure so much. "I've set my sights on those two beside you." Tao Yu blinked. "Good, you all go over there." Uncertain of the specifics and not wanting to take any risks, Bru decided to hold back and assert his dominance for now. "Are you trying to investigate me?" Tao Yu spoke again, and Bru remained silent. No answer is considered tacit consent. With his rage simmering, Bru opened his eyes once more. "What do you want?" This was never ending, wasn't it? They had already made concessions. Give up the competition and sign the agreement. Bru couldn't help but laugh in anger at Tao Yu's words, and then his mouth twisted into a grimace, revealing his chilling white teeth as he said, "We have never competed with Dada Company. If you have occasionally encountered some troubles and harassment, that's your problem. You can't blame everything on us. We need evidence to take action." As Bru said this, he was grinding his teeth, his words laced with a touch of vengeful satisfaction. "What now? Still couldn't deal with us in the end, could you? Even if it's harassment, what can you do? Even if you know it was us, what can you do? Everything is done within the rules. If there's no evidence, then it wasn't us." Thinking of his adversary's frustration, Bru truly felt refreshed, as if all the previous restraints had been vented, and a slight smile appeared on his face. "Friend, we can't be hasty in our affairs in the new development zone. We are all people of the development zone. We'll see each other again, so you should be responsible for your words." Bru shook the wine glass in his hand, his face showing a look of confident victory. The problem now was intractable. "We are no weaker than you, without territory, barefoot and not afraid of those with shoes. What can you do to us? Coming here brazenly is nothing but a display of impotent rage." Slap! Tao Yu delivered a resounding slap, not a hard one, just with the force of an ordinary person. The damage wasn't great, but it was extremely insulting. "I don't like the way you're looking at me." Having been slapped across the face, Bru was still somewhat in disbelief. "You hit me." Slap! The other side of his face got slapped by Tao Yu as well. "I told you not to look at me like that. What are you waiting for? Get him." Bru, not yet 19, had shown great restraint up until now due to familial teachings, despite his concerns about potential problems. But the two resounding slaps from Tao Yu completely drove him over the edge of reason. Before Tao Yu's forceful intervention, the hostess ladies who had been keeping company had already scattered either through the door or under the table. As they left, they didn't forget to quickly tack on a reminder that you pay for anything you break. Their smooth exit was almost heartbreaking. And it was only after the hostess ladies had left that Bru roared and lunged at Tao Yu, his body suddenly covered in metallic luster scales, his fingernails gleaming sharply. His companions also made their moves, with one agile individual poised to entangle Panda and delay him, aiming to create a 4-on-1 situation to quickly resolve the fight. But the next moment, in front of the one preparing to pounce on Panda, a red Gangchi imbued palm appeared. Are you kidding me, still fixating on someone else? Gangchi! The agile figure's scalp tingled, as he realized the strike was faster than himself and unavoidable. Boom! The force of the blow ravaged the area. The individual who had been about to delay Panda by attacking him rocketed backward into two of his companions, the three tumbling together. After airily sending one flying, Tao Yu moved in on Bru, whose expression had already soured, alternating left and right palms charged with Gangchi, effortlessly shattering the last two companions' defenses and almost simultaneously grabbing their throats and lifting them in the air. I was reasonable with you, yet you attack me. Bru, throat constricted and unable to speak, nearly wanted to cry out in misery. Never before in his life had he suffered such indignity. Chapter 262. Bad temper. Not talking? Think you can pretend it wasn't you who attacked me just because you're silent? Tao Yu was holding both of their necks, incessantly shaking them, almost rattling Bru and his pals apart. Gonna talk or not? Speak up, will you? Still giving me the silent treatment? Commendable courage. The three that Tao Yu had slapped away were now rolling into a ball. As they shook their heads and came to, they witnessed the scene before them and trembled, not daring to make a sound. It was Panda who managed to suppress the shock from behind, speaking with a hint of embarrassment. Tao bro, they might not be able to talk. How about we put them down first and ask? Oh, is that so? You couldn't speak and didn't say it earlier, I thought you were harboring resentment. Tao Yu released his grip, and the two nearly out-of-breath guys fell to the ground, kneeling and gasping for air with their hands clutching their necks. Still not talking. Tao Yu tilted his head and glanced at them. His flat tone made Bru, who was gasping for air, truly shed tears. But even though he was in pain, he forced himself to speak in a raspy voice. Sorry. It was our fault before. Even after being beaten, still having to apologize, that's the power of strength. Even as Bru was pitifully shedding tears, now he could only bow his head in contrition. What kind of fierce character had Panda found? This was way too out of line. But then again, there really wasn't much you could say against it. Such trivial matters, the security team couldn't be bothered to deal with them. They weren't crossing any line, after all. What if the real security team came? What would they say? A scuffle born out of a dispute, and if your side loses, who can you blame? If you can't win, don't talk back. A smack or two didn't cause any injuries. This has always been the way things are done in the inner city. The weak who provoke the strong are at fault. If you're weak, don't give anyone an excuse. Now, this gesture made it entirely clear what was meant. Gangchi. Bru felt a heaviness in his heart. Theoretically, if someone who pursued the path of kinetic strength owned Gangchi, only then were they considered to be on the same starting line as those who underwent mechanical transformation or foreign body implantation. Before that, their comprehensive abilities at the same level were inferior, but the unique properties of kinetic strength might allow you to burst the internal organs of the latter two and achieve a kill with impressive offensive power. Truly, in a one-on-one fight, they wouldn't be at a disadvantage. But their ability to take hits, their margin for error, and capacity to handle emergencies were far inferior. In an environment like the Abyss, they just weren't as reliable as the latter two. Until Gangchi appeared, that's when they were truly on an equal footing. Gangchi brief spurts could even withstand a few bullets at critical moments, completely changing the game. Middle rank partners sometimes could pass the strength assessment with a single expertise, but there was a rigid rule among high rank partners regarding bullet resistance and margin for error without additional equipment. Having mastered Gangchi meant that you qualified for the strength of a high rank partner or had already become one. Who exactly was this person? While Bru was reluctantly apologizing, his mind kept racing. His henchmen beside him were also apologizing profusely. Truth be told, Panda's family head was just a high-rank partner, and while Bru's family had better conditions, they hadn't surpassed that level either. His family owned a factory in the old development zone, and although neither could claim to be from prominent clans, they were both from reputable inner-city households. Even the stronger members of declining noble families wouldn't necessarily surpass them by much. Which meant that, no matter what, the person who had just made a move was at the parent level for both families. It was like a parent hitting a child. Seeing how sincere your apologies are, I suppose I could forgive you. Tao Yu patted Bru's shoulder with a nonchalant smile. But I've said before that I'm currently Dada Company's largest shareholder, and I don't want any more interference from you all. Tao Yu straightened Bru's disheveled collar. This shocked Bru all over again. Really, someone from the development zone? Impossible. It should only be 10 months now. He has mastered Gangqi already? Who on earth is it? This is practically a whole version ahead of us. Bru couldn't stop pondering in his heart. Currently, in the new development zone, there were several tough characters from the inner city, with both family power and talent top-notch. Their strength probably had also crossed the threshold of a high-level partner. But none of them took the path of Gangqi. Thinking of this, he couldn't help wanting to explain. We. SHH. Tao Yu made a gesture to keep quiet and then continued. It's also possible that someone else might attack our farm or something, but since I can't find them, if anything goes wrong, we'll seek compensation from you. Tao Yu's words instantly made Bru's face turn green, and he felt bitter in his heart, his facial expression twisted with conflict. Sir, we really intend to back off sincerely. With you around, we wouldn't dare to do such meaningless things even if you lent us the boldness. We can seek a profit-sharing arrangement with others, we only did what we did before because there seemed to be an opportunity. Bru was earnestly persuasive, explaining his intentions forthrightly. In the past, he clung on persistently because there was a real chance of getting what they wanted and the effort would be rewarded. Otherwise, they wouldn't want to waste time and energy either. Now with the presence of someone akin to a high-level partner, a true pinnacle of the new development zone besides the big shots of the floating city, there's naturally no need to waste time anymore. I don't care, you did it before. Tao Yu utterly disregarded the other party's explanation. Then he turned his head to look at Panda and said, Panda, you agree with me, don't you? Hearing Tao Yu's words, Panda immediately understood, despite not having rehearsed, and hesitantly said, while that's true, it indeed seems a bit unfair to always have them stand guard for us. Upon hearing Panda's words, Bru felt a surge of excitement. He had not expected his former opponent to speak on his behalf. How about this, we provide a portion of the profits as payment for their guard services. Panda always valued harmony and wealth. With Tao Yu playing the bad cop over there, he naturally followed suit, playing the good cop. Having chased Bru away today, there might be another wave tomorrow. The problem now was that Dada Company's territory was simply too lucrative. Their own strength and profitability were stretched to the limit, especially since the major shareholder Tao Yu was always fishing around elsewhere. But if they continued to draw people into their partnership, that would reduce the earnings. They couldn't just recruit everyone they saw. If they outsourced some of the guard duties, that wouldn't be unacceptable, all parties could accept that. Is that so? Tao Yu asked as if questioning further. He usually didn't manage affairs, which allowed him to act as an unaccountable and willful expert, making solving some issues even simpler. People were used to Panda's smooth persona, and a sudden change would seem inappropriate. But it was different for Tao Yu. A display of strength by him also made it convenient for Panda to exert influence in his daily management. Many things could then be passed off as, it's not what I want, but our major shareholder has a terrible temper. Let's just do it this way, we are all pioneers of the same development zone, we see each other all the time. Then let's just do that, after all, you're the one who handles things. Tao Yu showed off his strength and dominance, along with some irrationality, first cornering several big players. Later, with Panda smoothing things over through relationships, the trouble at hand was quickly appeased. The impact on the establishment was minimal. Aside from the serving girls who ran off at the beginning due to the proximity of the conflict, everyone else was purely there to watch the commotion. After seeing Gangqi, no one dared to say much, only whispering among themselves quietly. Ultimately, Bru signed an agreement, albeit reluctantly. He would be responsible for any security issues in the 3 zones currently occupied by Dada Company. In effect, Panda had strong-armed a highly cost-effective insurance policy. We will also announce our partnership officially when we get back. Our strengths are not to be underestimated in the new development zone. After announcing our alliance, those who won't get good profit won't dare to take any risks. Bru voiced his plans, bearing the humiliation. That's your business, and I can't be bothered with it. Don't trouble me for no reason, I'm very lazy and I'll get very angry if you make me take action. Tao Yu glanced at Bru and saw the latter sadly nod his head. It was clear to him now, the temper really was bad. Chapter 263. Logistics. Tao Yu is formidable. As the problem was resolved and he left, Panda still seemed somewhat dazed. He originally felt that he had almost caught up with Tao Yu. But unexpectedly, the gap had only widened. Having Gang Chi didn't necessarily mean one was a senior partner, but it did indicate that one had crossed the hardest threshold and had a direct ticket in hand. The other party was now on an equal footing with his own parental generation. Even though Panda also believed he could reach or even surpass his father's heights and had made a great name for himself in the new development zone. To have reached this degree in just 10 short months, the disparity was really too big. Even after 10 months of accumulation, the inner-city pioneers with a foundation in the new development zone had all experienced no small increase in strength. But at present, in the new development zone, there were only a handful of inner-city pioneers who could stand shoulder to shoulder with the other party. There are now over 10,000 pioneers in the new development zone, 1 or 2,000 inner-city pioneers, and now less than 100 elites have made it through the intermediate partner level. Those suspected of having the strength of a senior partner? Only in the single digits. The number is probably not even as high as the bigwigs of Floating City. This is the top-tier genius that could make the bigwigs of Floating City stoop down to recruit personally, capable of reaching the top of Inner City and perhaps even ascent to Floating City. Zhonglei had an expressionless face, feeling as if in a dream. Originally, when they first saw Tao Yu become an intermediate partner, their proud and lofty group, while impressed, did not think they had no chance. What they envied most was Tao Yu's connection with the big shots of Floating City. Now, half a year later when they met again, at first, Zhonglei felt that he must have caught up quite a bit, as this half year he had lived enriching and hard-working days, and his strength had also improved a lot. And he had fully experienced that once strength reached a certain level, the cost and difficulty of further improvement increased exponentially. Although Tao Yu would certainly be stronger than himself, who wasn't even an intermediate partner, the gap shouldn't be as big as it had been initially, as his further improvements must have cost him much more than what he himself had spent. However, Gang Chi. This was something Zhonglei didn't even dare to think about before. This was something that even the captain of the Outer City Security Force, Zi Chuan, didn't have. It was just too exaggerated. Now there shouldn't be these troubles, right? Tao Yu casually said. Gone, and even if there are still problems, by the time we return and Bru makes the announcement, they will be resolved. At this moment, Panda also appeared somewhat invigorated. If there were any bigger problems, that would be an issue for young Master Sun to handle. Having this major shareholder was truly perfect. It's not actually that scary to deal with things, but as the son of a senior partner, Panda clearly understood that one must have the capability to defend the value they create. Effort is rewarded, and that in itself is a very satisfying thing. By the way, I'm looking for something that can fly, any recommendations? For expedited travel. Tao Yu didn't pay much mind to the issue that had already passed, and then casually inquired. He had only had his rig for 10 months and hadn't spent much time in the current world, let alone in inner city, so he needed to spend time learning some basic common knowledge. Long distance? Flight? Those are quite expensive. Panda, being a pioneer from the new city area himself, had also considered this issue, and as soon as Tao Yu asked, he already had several suggestions subconsciously. There are some specialized factories in the old development zone, with quite a few options for flying tools, but those that can be carried by an individual for interdimensional travel are quite limited, usually some kind of single soldier backpack that can provide multiple rocket boosts at critical moments. Panda sighed, understanding that this was an easier concept for Tao Yu to grasp. In the old development zone, there were many large personal flying devices exceeding the carrying range, and they offered a better cost-performance ratio. However, hoverbikes of the appropriate size for minor wealthy ladies exploded in price. Tao Yu simply wanted something with a higher cost-performance ratio that he could afford. I did some research recently, and there are roughly 2 types that meet Brother Tao's criteria. One is the standard solar-powered personal flyer, priced at 150,000 Yuan Force, with a top speed of 300 km per hour and a full range of 1,500 km. The downside is that it's too rudimentary. The other is an energy charging hoverbike. Its shape is somewhat similar to that of the Sun's two notables, it's a castrated imitation version. With a full charge, it has a range of 5,000 km is a Yuan Force item, priced at $1 million, and you'd also need to spend an additional 100,000 for the charging system. The charging time is quite a bit longer than the former, but it's faster and more dexterous. Panda's explanation had Tao Yu settling on the former right away. $1 million could cover the cost of his 9 Yang Divine Skill's second deification, and even though the 9 Yang Divine Skill was not quite ready for a second deification yet, the funds could be deliciously used for deifying something else. Even though he had to deal with the Titan's issue first, there would certainly be considerable expenses at Great Tang in the future. The first one will do. I just wonder if the battery for extended range can be replaced. It seems so. I'll take you there, and you can just ask directly. Panda had received over 200,000 as a share of the dividends before, so of course, he knew that Tao Yu could afford it. Meanwhile, Zhang Lei, who was standing by and heard Tao Yu mention buying something worth tens of thousands, also had his own thoughts. Even the earnings from reaching the mid-level partner's quota would be more than this amount of money. But to be able to spend such an amount all at once on something that doesn't enhance strength, and has just a single function, was indeed quite a revelation to him. This product, just by the sound of it, seemed to have average sales. Not only is it not cheap, but it also fundamentally can't carry any subordinates it's meant either for a lone wolf or for a small team of elites. It could be useful with a very specific purpose, but it's truly impractical for pioneering. If it runs out of battery, you have to wait, and if left carelessly in the wild, it's likely to get damaged or something. However, thinking of Tao Yu's Gangqi, he felt relieved again. It's not the same level, thinking about the Emperor using a golden carrying pole is indeed somewhat presumptuous. With his strength, he himself was a team. We are currently in a promotional period, for an additional 30,000, you can get an installed parachute pack and anti-collision airbags. Both the dedicated battery and the solar panels are priced at 20,000 per set. Tao Yu looked at the personal flyer in front of him and was somewhat speechless. It was completely different from what he had imagined, looking more like an oversized, foldable quadcopter drone. The material was mainly light metal rods, completely hollow, with no windscreen. It resembled an enlarged version of a DJI drone with a cage hung underneath. Ugly in appearance and uncomfortable to ride in, but it indeed satisfied the need for a personal flying device for long distances. One could feel that several Yuan Force components emphasized stability, and there was a guarantee in the case of an accident. But seeing the guarantee of compensation in case of an accident always made Tao Yu think of the parachutes with no bad reviews. However, there was no helping it, given the price. In the end, Tao Yu still ordered a set, and even prepared 2 extra fully charged batteries, causing his Yuan Force to decrease sharply. Also said that the house should be rented first, which can be done. Various expenses will be charged to the company's account, and from now on, they'll be deducted from the dividend each time. Tao Yu scratched his head. He didn't plan on buying a house either, it would be too expensive all at once. Renting was more sensible. Wang Gaodan, with the convenience of being a mid-level partner, rented a nice 2-bedroom, 1 living room for 3,000 Yuan Force. Renting a place for 4,000 would be enough for him to bring his family over. Although my father and the others will definitely agonize over the rent and daily expenses, the environment in the inner city is indeed better. Tao Yu was resolved. For now, 4,000 Yuan Force wasn't much, it would disappear with just a bit of acceleration anyway. Besides, he would be wasting time traveling back and forth to the inner city, and he needed a place to stay. It was essentially just renting a larger space, and having various expenses added to the dividend account didn't feel like much of an issue. Chapter 264, Settling Down. As a mid-level partner in the new development zone and a shareholder of Dada Company, sir, you can certainly move in directly. With both your and Mr. Panda's certification, it's okay if you need to spend long periods in the abyss. Charges will be billed to Dada Company. Just settle the account when you have time. Tao Yu and Panda had come to the apartment building where Wang Gaodan used to live and smoothly signed the rental contract. The original price of the 3-bedroom apartment, 4,000 a month, was negotiated down to 3,200, plus some taxes and garbage fees paid by the agency, resulting in a total monthly payment of 3,500 Yuan Force. All these expenses were charged to Dada Company's account, and they would proactively seek settlement with the company periodically. Moreover, they offer a custom food service here, providing different fresh ingredients daily. You can customize meal sets, choose raw ingredients, and even select ready-made dishes. Tao Yu also added 2,000 Yuan Force monthly so that his parents could choose the specifics themselves while he was in the abyss. The expenses also tabbed to the company's account. Of course, we will provide the best cooperation for a talent like Mr. Tao moving in. The responsible person, wearing a monocular and a crisp suit, was exceedingly courteous to Tao Yu. My family is not worldly, having come from the outsider. I hope Manager Huang will take good care of them if they encounter any problems. The other party was agreeable, so Tao Yu didn't skimp on the praise. He only needed a foothold in the inner city, while his family would spend more time here. Not at all, it's our duty. I'll make sure to remind the security staff. We have a full set of surveillance here, and the security team is very comprehensive. Moreover, many first and second generations from the outsider who have just arrived choose to settle here, with plenty of families as well. Manager Huang talked on and on. Tao Yu nodded in acknowledgement. He would choose this place, of course, because it seemed satisfactory. He had stayed at Wang Gaodan's place and had some preliminary understanding of it. It met what was needed, which was good enough. Tao's family doesn't have much starting out, so I'll arrange for some staff to bring furniture from the abyss. And wouldn't you know it, this furniture has become quite popular. It constitutes a source of income for us in the transportation business. Panda said with a grin. All right. Tao Yu had just resolved a big problem for the company, so enjoying privileges was his due right. Tao's the man. He moves in whenever he wants to. It's way better than my place. At that moment, Zhang Lei's face was filled with envy. I'm also renting in South City, a 700 a month attic space with shared bathrooms. Plus, the neighborhood is filled with other not-so-nice living conditions, like dorm-style rooms infested with fleas, cockroaches, and rats. It's normal for a single person like you. I have many people to consider. Actually, you could consider sharing a place with a few other guys. Tao Yu suggested offhandedly. Considering space per individual, Zhang Lei's attic shouldn't be too bad, it's primarily the overall environment that's problematic. Ah, it's tough, though. Everyone's doing their own thing. Zhao Yan even got married. Zhang Lei's expression grew wistful. They had all been ambitious when they used to dine together, feeling they were on the brink of achieving great things, as high-talent people from the outsider supporting each other. But the reality of the past half-year was enough to clear any illusions. In terms of talent, they certainly were good, but the gap with the inner-city offspring was still significant. Most chose to do as Zhang Lei did, leveraging their talents to find a decent company to serve. Only Niu Changchun, with his level S talent, caught the eye of a great Tang Titan and was taken under their wing. And Zhao Yan, who always claimed she didn't want to get pregnant at a critical time, ended up as the concubine to an inner-city lad and was rumored to be with child already. Hearing Zhang Lei express these sentiments with a sigh, Tao Yu felt some emotion but no surprise. This was the reality. But for Lin Chao and his Chaoyang society, things are relatively tougher. Their leader is too rash, making too many enemies all at once. And since Lin Chao represents the Chaoyang society in the development zone, if not for his talent, he would probably have been shot in the dark by now. Zhang Lei continued, making Tao Yu freeze for a moment, but he chose not to comment further. It was their choice after all. He somewhat admired Lin Chao and wouldn't mind lending a hand if doing so didn't affect his interests. But for now, that was a murky situation he couldn't afford to wade into. Enough about that. Let's get Tao a bed to settle in for now. Tao, do you want to stay at my place tonight? No need. I'm not so delicate. Sleeping under the stars is nothing unusual for me. You've been delayed for a day already. Go back home. Tao Yu sent the two on their way and returned to the empty rental home. The 3-bedroom rental had little in it, save for a wooden chair left in the center of the living room. Tao Yu tossed his backpack carelessly into a corner of the room. He walked directly to the chair, patted the dust off it, and pulled it over to the window to sit. With his feet propped on the windowsill, he watched the city outside grow more colorful as dusk fell and the shadow of the floating city loomed above, a touch of melancholy crossing his face. 10 months, settling in the inner city. Bought a flying device, so there's no real hurry. Let them take their time on the road, I can always fly there later. Tao Yu pondered his plans for the future. Though he now had access to the Great Tang world and was sure of its many benefits, the next step was definitely to resolve the issue with the Titans, and best to return to base to finalize the breeding plans too, taking it one step at a time. There might already be stray titans nearing Xiangyang. I wonder if the Martial World Conference is going smoothly. Night had fallen, and Tao Yu hadn't turned on the lights in the room, just silently watching outside, allowing his mind to gradually relax and then enter into meditation, quietly passing the midnight hours. Tao Yu's eyelashes fluttered, and he opened his eyelids, revealing his deep eyes. Outside the window, the colorful lights were still twinkling, but there were few sounds on the streets. It was the late half of the night, and those who were out were probably in some nightlife spots. However, Tao Yu's spirit perception had stirred moments before. Upon opening his eyes, he saw several figures chasing each other on the rooftop of the building opposite. 6 or 7 silhouettes, each agile in form. Eaves, billboards, windows, every place possible to leverage was navigated smoothly, showing that each individual was quite adept. It seemed that the others were chasing one among them. The one in front occasionally let out unpleasant, crazed laughter, which Tao Yu found somewhat nauseating. Madman! Tao Yu mused, using his excellent vision to make out the face of the person fleeing. Yellow face, gaunt, cheeks hollow, dark circles under the eyes similar to makeup, purplish lips. Yet the expression on the face was incredibly excited. I'm not crazy. Why do you bugs keep chasing after me? I'll kill you all. The fleeing figure continued to shriek oddly, yet he kept on running. The pursuers, however, remained silent throughout. Judging by their attire, they were likely partners tasked with capturing madmen, or night watchers. Inner city, not much better indeed. Tao Yu, familiar with madmen from his time in South City, knew such matters were too common to intervene. He silently lowered his feet and prepared to close the window. But as he was halfway through closing it, something seemed to occur to him. He picked up his wristwatch and began flipping through it. He had downloaded some long-term tasks onto it. As he browsed, he quickly found a corresponding entry. Urban management, repeatable on-site prevention of cities' violent security incidents, capture of mentally disturbed individuals, capture and report of heretics. Depending on the difficulty, rewards will be given accordingly. Glancing over it, if the madman or dangerous person were of mid-level partner caliber, the minimum reward would be 10,000 Yuan Force. Though, given the expenses of cultivating such a powerful being and the risk involved, it made sense for the reward to be high. And from his previous observation, although the 6 individuals chasing were relatively weaker, the one they pursued likely fell into this category. But it seemed that the person was intentionally leading them towards a particular place. Hey, if it's delivered to my doorstep, I suppose I can share a piece of the pie. Tao Yu donned the partner's mask deftly. Then his figure fragmented like an ink painting dissolved in water, vanishing without a trace. Chapter 265. Side income. This guy is really troublesome, Captain Court, what should we do? He's too fast, I feel like he's just leading us on, and we are getting further and further off track. A figure clad in a black robe, wearing battle gear underneath, while trying to surround and intercept from the side, complained into the walkie-talkie. Everyone be careful, this might be a mid-level partner-grade lunatic, stronger than me. Captain Court, who had been pursuing the lunatic the most closely, felt a heavy sensation in his heart as he watched the figure ahead seemingly playfully darting around. In his 6-person squad, he was the strongest and most experienced, having already reached the standard of a mid-level partner. But despite that, unable to pass the assessment due to the gap in talent and strength, he had failed several times. Even though he couldn't pass the assessment, the team's cooperation was still strong enough to have the capability to capture lunatics of this level. We are professionals. Court saw the other person flip over a billboard, effortlessly pushing off to leap down. He did the same with a push of his hand. However, just as his body cleared the edge, he was suddenly struck by a chilling sensation. He saw that the lunatic had not gone down as expected but was grinning with one hand gripping the eaves, looking at him while pointing a gun in his direction, trigger already pulled. Bring it on. Court didn't shrink back from the attack, instead, he surged forward. Bang! A bullet hit his forehead, a spark flew, tearing off a piece of leather, revealing the silvery metal underneath. Court's entire body then began to transform rapidly, unfolding outwards with the sound of whirring machinery, as his limbs suddenly extended. In a spider-like form, he managed to embrace his opponent, shrugging off several gunshot wounds in the process. The slots in his arms automatically aligned, tightly enveloping the opponent, then his body started to flicker with blue light and electric currents, sizzling loudly, the air filled with the smell of ozone and the scent of charred flesh. After successfully embracing the other, a smile tugged at the corners of Court's mouth. Done. Although he had always been unable to pass the mid-level partner assessment, as long as he worked in sync with his teammates, capturing a target of this level wasn't a problem at all. No matter how strong, there are always weaknesses, this time each of us will earn at least 1,000. Court's face was filled with joy. Facing such targets, the risk was greater, but the rewards were also more substantial. The minds of lunatics were flawed, their combat skills and ability to recognize traps greatly diminished, simply. But before Court could finish his thought, the alarm from the pressure warning device went off, causing his expression to drastically change. What's happening? Impossible. Feeling the electric shock continuing, but the other party was trying to break free through brute strength, Court was startled. This was the modification he had specially developed for his missions. His fighting power might be weaker, but once he managed to lock the enemy down successfully, even an enemy several times stronger couldn't escape. The creaking sound of metal fatigue was disturbing, and Court's face turned ugly as he watched the pressure warning numbers on the buckle. He suddenly released the locks on his arms and kicked the other person, trying to use the momentum to get back to the rooftop. However, in the next moment, his foot was caught by the other person. And he was fiercely slammed against the wall nearby, bang. With alarms blaring all over his body, Court could barely manage to transform his arm into a gun, attempting to fight back. But in the next instant, he was flung to another side with tremendous force. Captain! The other team members immediately implemented the contingency plan. If there was a chance, of course, the captain would capture the target alive, but if that failed, they were to immediately switch to shoot-to-kill mode. All 5 teammates took out their long-range weapons without hesitation and fired towards the front. The captain's defense and control were almost perfect, leaving his attack capability rare, but this also meant he could resist ordinary bullets quite well, and a few stray shots weren't a concern. That's why the captain always took half of the earnings, and no one complained. But they were horrified to discover that their bullets, although penetrating the person's body, seemed to sink into putty. Oh no! It's the mad mud monster! How come it's him? That's not what he looks like at all. Damn it! Someone call for help! Where's the security team? He lured us here on purpose. This place is a bit secluded. Having seen the effects of the attack, and realizing that the opponent had become immune to the captain's electric shocks, they quickly figured out who the attacker was. Working in this line of business was like licking the blade of a knife to survive, it was imperative to understand many unspoken rules as well as some kind of hero's roster. But according to their information, the mad mud monster, a half-crazed criminal, was not supposed to look like this at all. I love that look on your faces. The mad mud monster laughed maniacally, his eyes filled with cruelty. The line between prey and hunter changes in an instant. Now, the roles have reversed. The corner of his mouth extended almost to the back of his head, looking extremely terrifying. His somewhat perverse voice made people shiver just upon hearing it. Despair also filled their hearts, as they knew that by tomorrow their names would be announced in the task center's public broadcast. Run! Save as many as possible! Do you think you can escape? Puh! No sooner had the thought of escape crossed their minds, the next moment, the mad mud monster, so self-assured in his might, was pressed down by a hand covered in gang chi, and slammed into the metal frame of a nearby billboard, bending the entire metal structure. Before he could react, he was yanked out from the metal frame and, after being released, a punch landed on his abdomen. He hung from the hand like mud. With just 2 blows, the mad mud monster, who had just lured the targets into this secluded area, had truly turned into mud, completely losing consciousness. Pretty sturdy, Tao Yu remarked, surprised, holding the creature that was barely human-shaped but still radiated a strong life force. It should have some kind of Yuan Force skill or a bloodline absorption ability. Dressed in a full partner's suit, his face concealed by a matching mask, he carried the deformed, melting prey in one hand and glanced at the other few people on the scene. How much is this guy worth? Tao Yu, having heard their exclamations, knew this person must be a somewhat famous fugitive. Probably not cheap. In terms of overall capability and power level, he was actually just on the level of an average mid-level partner. But his specialized defensive characteristics and apparent ability to disguise and shapeshift made his personal features quite strong. It was no wonder he had managed to evade capture until now. If he's captured alive, there's a bounty of 40,000, said Court, who made a living in this line of work. Although a bit dazed and his gear malfunctioning, he still managed to speak in a distorted electronic voice. Thank you for saving our lives. We can take you to collect the bounty. Court slowly got to his half-sitting position, his hand morphing into a welding tool, giving himself a couple of zaps in various spots before staggering to his feet. In a way, this guy had his own specializations too, just completely countered by the mad mud monster. Can I collect it this late? The Night Watcher's department is open all the time, but only for specific tasks, Court replied patiently, not showing any surprise at Tao Yu's ignorance. It's normal for someone not specialized in this field to take the opportunity to make some extra money when they see it. Partners typically have many kinds of tasks they primarily undertake. Just between the abyss and the real world, there are already major differences. Many people choose a direction to specialize in based on their own traits, becoming experts in handling those kinds of matters. Oh, do they also handle heretic god followers? Heretic god followers? The others paused. This guy is one, isn't he? Weren't you pursuing him because he's a heretic god follower? Tao Yu lifted the mad mud monster, now a lump shaped like mud, in his hand. This guy had a stench similar to Mass's from the last time, with Tao Yu's spiritual sense now so refined, he easily detected the odor after just 2 blows. Chapter 266, Meditation Master. Even though the inner city was brightly lit all night long, the number of people on the streets significantly decreased after midnight. The ones still wandering the streets at this late hour didn't seem very decent. With their hair dyed in all sorts of colors, distinctive clothes, and the strange appearances created by mechanical modifications and alien bio-implants, it was almost like a parade of ghosts and monsters. Many were howling and wailing, their sanity also not seeming quite intact. However, there were none sleeping on the streets. Sleeping on the streets of the inner city was not allowed, and anyone found doing so would be taken away immediately. If you had money, you could bail yourself out. Without money, you'd have to work off your debt through labor or even sell your organs. Either way, arresting people was always profitable. Those who frequented the streets after midnight had grown accustomed to these rules and were careful not to slip up. Nonetheless, Tao Yu still noticed individuals dressed like Court and his group, hauling off a blonde-haired man who was either drunk or happy, heading in the same direction as them. My lord might rarely take on these nighttime tasks. Sometimes, when we can't find a proper target, we do things like this to make up the numbers. Court whispered from beside him. They could detect heretic god followers. This was a dignitary who had practiced the meditation technique. What about just grabbing someone randomly and knocking them out? Not that it doesn't happen, but the risk-to-benefit ratio is too low. If found out, it could lead to death, and if the person is only knocked out, they won't be detained. They'll just be tossed aside to wake and walk away on their own. If they died, there would be some investigation. Court was well seasoned in the ways of the inner city, familiar with its darker aspects. Although crime was rampant, risks and returns were usually carefully weighed. Some punishments were so severe, they hardly seemed worth the effort involved. Following the street lamps, it wasn't long before Tao Yu saw a brightly lit hall ahead. This hall appeared somewhat more respectable from the outside, not featuring the usual peculiar architectural style of the inner city. Through the glass doors, he could see many people queuing up inside, many of whom were accompanied by drunkards or appeared to be manhandling others. People were also hastily leaving and quickly disappearing into the night. Most of their attire was similar to Court's, with a few wearing partner suits. As the glass doors slid open automatically, several people entered. Because of Tao Yu's distinctive clay monster disposition, it attracted a lot of attention. What's this? An alien bio-implant gone horribly wrong? Some people seemed unsure. But when one person dressed in a partner suit saw Tao Yu, his expression turned somewhat solemn. It's a clay monster. Very few undergo mud monster lineage implants, it's too painful. What? It's him. Finally caught, damn it, a friend of mine died by his hand. Hey! As someone identified Tao Yu, a small commotion stirred among the crowd. Looking at Tao Yu and his group, there was a sense of awe. But after a quick glance at Court and his companions, the focus largely returned to Tao Yu. Court and his group were regulars here, surviving a clay monster's surprise attack without being wiped out was already fortunate, so the issue obviously lay with this new partner. Court, big bro, is this a big catch? A familiar face couldn't help but ask. Don't even mention, we almost got done in. Clay monsters can shape-shift into others, and there was nothing about that in the intel. All thanks to this noble passing by who lent a hand. Come on, make some room, let's let the noble go first. Cord and his companions went back and forth, and the people in the queue actually made way. What about cutting in line being impolite? Strength rules everything here. Staff responsible for the night watchers presumably heard the situation as well, and someone even emerged from backstage. Crazy mud monster? This friend has done a great service, this creature has a strong survival ability and has even escaped from a high-ranking partner. The reward for a live capture has risen to 45,000. The staff member was all smiles, a stark contrast to the aloof demeanor they had behind the service window before. In terms of overall strength, the crazy mud monster is just average among middle-level partners, but if you single out its survival and disguise abilities, it's definitely top-notch. Oh, that's quite good, and it might increase even more now that he's also a heretic god follower. Tao Yu pointed at the mud on his hand, causing the staff member's expression to stiffen, followed by a somewhat helpless chuckle. Sir, although madmen sometimes resemble heretic god followers, identifying a heretic god follower requires following procedures and the confirmation of a meditation master. Many heretic god followers also have unstable mental states, but there are far more ordinary madmen, half-madmen, people with extreme personalities, and those with hormonal imbalances in the inner city. Heretic god followers are just a tiny minority. He thought Tao Yu was trying to raise the price, then arbitrarily label the monster. If this were any other ordinary night watcher, he would have started cursing, but Tao Yu was different. The staff member calmly and patiently explained the situation. To confirm a heretic god follower, we usually need some related evil god items and props, and then we proceed with an application. Does he have any on him? There's nothing like that, but I know the meditation technique. Shall we go through the procedure and see how much more the reward will be? Tao Yu recalled the 50,000 that the little rich lady had handed him directly. This crazy mud monster was surely stronger than Masu and the others combined, and it was captured alive, surely the reward would be even greater, right? You know the meditation technique. The staff member was surprised, and the nearby whispers also paused momentarily. Meditation techniques are quite rare among practitioners in the inner city, often requiring high innate talent and personal branding of visualization diagrams by a meditation master, which is a burden for the master. Yes. If you can confirm a heretic god follower, you might get an additional 1 to 2,000 in rewards for providing the clue, but since the capture expenses were already paid, I'm afraid we can't add it on top. Hearing this, Tao Yu felt that the little rich lady might have had her eye on him for a while, and what she gave might have already been the upper limit for rewards related to clues. Although Tao Yu's expenses for supplies might reach 1 or 2,000 nowadays, he knew how difficult Yuan Force was to come by. Usually, he had to accumulate several months of earnings, so an extra 1,000 or 2 for standing around a bit longer was certainly not too little for him. Let's follow the procedure then. Alright, but since we have to ask a meditation master, please ensure that what you say is true, otherwise we could all get into trouble. The staff member repeated the caution and then invited Tao Yu into their office. Because Tao Yu had caught a suspected heretic god follower, they even specially brought in a large transparent container and had Tao Yu stuff the crazy mud monster inside. After Tao Yu and the staff left, the hall was abuzz with whispers. To be suspected as a heretic god follower. Hope it's not true. Crazy, who would risk so much for a mere 1,000 or 2 in rewards, given his status? Troublesome times indeed. Better to be more cautious lately. The information about heretic god followers put pressure on this group of night watchers because if there were indeed heretic god followers, their jobs would be the most likely to come into contact with them. You just have to look at Cord and the others to know they almost got seriously harmed. Meanwhile, Tao Yu didn't have to wait long. The matter of the heretic god follower was of great importance. Right after Tao Yu had reported it, Sun Shihu personally came to confirm. The inner city had a robust system, and indeed they were quick to act. In about 10 minutes, an energetic old man in a sleeping gown was brought in. A staff member and a bodyguard-like dwarf escorted the old master in his gown. This must be the elder who was woken up from his sleep and brought here directly. First, he casually glanced at the yet-to-recover crazy mud monster, and then his gaze shifted to Tao Yu. Soon, Tao Yu felt a thick mental force enveloping him. The mental energy was thicker than his own, but the quality was much lower. Chapter 267, Huge Loss. Indeed, a heretic god follower, the stench is quite obvious. The robed elder nodded, casually signed his name on a form, and then turned to look at Tao Yu. Young man, is it you who discovered this? Not bad at all, you can even distinguish heretic god followers. Have you encountered them before? The robed elder watched Tao Yu with a hint of a relaxed smile. Yet, Tao Yu faintly sensed spirit perception alerting him that he was being guarded against. But the feeling was very faint, likely interference from the other party's overpoweringly robust spiritual power, which caused a shiver to run through Tao Yu's heart. Indeed, spirit perception wasn't infallible. If it weren't for the multiple layers of his spirit perception, plus the high quality of his spiritual power, he probably wouldn't have noticed. I have. Oh? Where did you see them? The robed elder's face held a trace of genuine interest, seemingly just curious. That should be irrelevant to today's matter. I've reported a heretic god follower, I don't wish to be harassed. Tao Yu did not follow the other's lead. The robed elder did not linger on this issue but instead turned it around and continued to ask. Then may I ask who is your mentor? Us old folks tend to have connections among ourselves, you see. Without our passage of the meditation technique, one cannot self-learn to achieve proficiency. I need to eliminate some risks. The robed elder's tone became somewhat neutral, hinting at a certain inquisitiveness. Seeing the situation, a staff member hurriedly said to Tao Yu. This is our meditation master, Master Wang. The robed elder heard what the staff member said and chuckled lightly. Needing a reminder to recognize me, naturally, I have my doubts. Those guys' disciples wouldn't be so rude, plus, I felt a bit earlier, very vibrant, very young. The robed elder spoke with confidence. Tao Yu was beginning to understand why he was suddenly fixated on such matters. It was because Tao Yu had blocked his observation with spiritual power before. Speaking of the sheer robustness of spirit, Tao Yu couldn't quite match the other party. But if it came to the purity of spiritual power, he had intrigued the young heiress with such playful banter before. Had the other party discovered he was being blocked? Nevertheless, sweeping around like that from the get-go was indeed too rude, not even the young heiress and others would do that. Is Master Wang trying to unearth my identity to facilitate revenge by the heretic god followers? If so, then I will have to resort to certain measures to protect myself. Tao Yu spoke evenly, neither rushed nor dragging. At his words, the short middle-aged man who had followed Master Wang in and had not spoken up until now widened his eyes and rebuked. Audacious! Do you intend to threaten Master Wang? As he spoke, he stepped forward and assumed the stance of the Thunder Run hand technique, his muscles bulged, and his clothes instantly puffed out, only not tearing due to the special fabric. However, no sooner had his words fallen than a palm began to loom larger before his eyes, and it clasped onto his face. The terrifying speed and the wind pressure deforming his face made him exhale sharply, releasing a layer of gang qi from his body. But to his dismay, he found his gang qi as brittle as paper, effortlessly torn apart by the other party's more domineering gang qi. A simple shake of the hand gripping his head generated such rapid vibrations that his brain seemed to scatter, leaving him dizzy and weak throughout his body in an instant. Master Wang, who was beside him, also faced the same plight. Master Wang, highly skilled in spiritual cultivation, didn't just wait for his demise but quickly muttered under his breath. His eyes seemed to emit a glow, and Tao Yu could feel several sharp spirit stingers rushing towards his mind. Tao Yu didn't wait for mental immunity to activate but proactively used his own sturdy spiritual force to block them, intercepting them effortlessly, merely causing a faint ripple before entirely stopping the assault. Then, his palm also clasped onto Master Wang's head and gave it a shake. The body of Master Wang, not as physically robust as the short man beside him, immediately went limp like a dead fish, devoid of any strength to resist. Tao Yu lifted both of their heads, holding them like two pieces of hung-cured meat, their bodies utterly slack. Can't understand plain talk, eh? Tao Yu shook the two of them again. The two, whose brains felt almost shaken apart, were now bitterly regretful. What on earth had they come upon? This was far too disrespectful of the rules, wasn't it? The staff in the office behind them all changed their expressions, too. The one who had received Tao Yu hurried to persuade. Sir, please calm down, calm down. Master Wang is an important talent, and you will have to take responsibility for this. He's an important talent, but am I not? He wanted to let heretics harm me before. Tao Yu didn't really mean to kill him, but he still lashed out with what seemed like symptoms of a persecution complex. Little brother, let go first. Master Wang, who was being held by the forehead and lifted into the air by Tao Yu, felt like his skull was about to be crushed by the grip. At this point, he could only plead softly. I'll explain to you. This meditation technique was transmitted under restrictions because I didn't know you. What? Does the meditation technique taught personally by the big shots from Floating City still need to be reported to you? No need, I believe you. Really, my head is going to explode, can you put me down first? Master Wang feared that any harsh words might further provoke Tao Yu. While enduring the pain, he whispered gently. If you were this gentle from the start, wouldn't that have been fine? Can't you speak nicely? What do you mean by interrogating someone like they're a criminal? Tao Yu still hadn't let go, and he shook him a few more times. Even someone with Master Wang's spiritual cultivation felt like he was about to roll his eyes back in his head. It's all my fault. If not you, then who? Me. I will compensate with money. Tao Yu let go, and Master Wang immediately dropped to the floor. His legs went soft, and he was about to fall, but Tao Yu reached out to catch him. Elderly sir, be careful not to fall. Tao Yu was all smiles as he helped Master Wang to his feet, ignoring the other dwarf who was still playing dead to the side. He even straightened the wrinkles on Master Wang's nightgown. This made Master Wang's expression turn bitter. Capturing an important follower of the heretic god will definitely unearth many clues. I think we can add a bit more on top of the original reward. Oh? How much more? The hand Tao Yu was using to straighten the other's collar didn't move away, instead, he tightened his grip on the nightgown, causing Master Wang to feel an extra sense of strangulation. 30,000. That's the highest I can authorize. Any higher would require a report. Tao Yu quickly calculated in his mind, he was expecting maybe 10 to 20,000, so getting as much as 30,000 wasn't bad at all. Master Wang, you've worked hard and done a great service, coming out so late and not even getting proper rest. Tao Yu showed a trace of appreciation. Seeing that Tao Yu had stopped ruffling his feathers, Master Wang carefully asked. That meditation technique really does have rules. Could you please disclose who taught you? It's not that I want to make things difficult for you now, I was just wrong in my attitude before. Indeed, having been smoothed over and holding benefits in hand, Tao Yu didn't mind clarifying because it wasn't something to be hidden. He told him right away. It was Miss Sun Xiu. I see, I was being presumptuous before. After that, he went over to the dwarf who was still laying on the ground and kicked him. What are you playing dead for? Was all the time I spent cultivating my mental power for nothing? Get up, aren't you going to take me home? The dwarf who had been playing dead on the ground flipped over with a carp jump, not daring to look at Tao Yu. Then, respected elder, I will be going back first. They will take care of the rest. Hold on a second. Tao Yu gestured with his hand. That mental attack you used on me, I'm quite interested in it. Where do you live? I might come by to seek your guidance when I'm free. The words from Tao Yu made Master Wang's expression turn bitter. Damn it, that's a huge loss. Feels like I've been entangled by something filthy. Chapter 268. Differences. Good deeds bring good rewards. Tao Yu looked at the Yuan Force that had just come into his hands, a satisfied expression appearing on his face. Although there was a bit of a procedure to receive the Yuan Force, and he had to wait for the reserve dispatch, he was completely fine with this wait. A total of 75,000 Yuan Force in rewards even for the current Tao Yu, that was a significant amount, an extra earning from just one night out. Relying on my knowledge of the plot in the abyss, and mooching off the rich miss over there, I slogged away for 10 months and only earned a bit over 20 million in total, which is just about the same as what the auction house would make lying around for a month or two. Tao Yu slowly exhaled, averaging it out, his daily earnings were only 1/10 of this unexpected windfall. However, the equity from the company hasn't been liquidated yet. Once the breeding business gets on the right track, showing a rising trend and promising future, I can sell part of the equity for cash. A company with good-looking financial statements and rising prospects, cashing out after an IPO, the money comes in much faster than earning it the hard way. This time's earnings are not as much as the last, and quite a lot less. Tao Yu sighed. Last time, he counted the earnings from the 3 wise titans and added the million reward from Sun Sheking, which substantially increased his net worth. Unfortunately, the additions this time were limited. He probably had to sell those 4,000 grassland soldiers to see a sizable increase in income. But being greedy isn't the way, one should bite off only as much as one can chew. Having such an easy life now is already quite the convenience. He had gone out to catch people for some extra money in the late night and had waited for a Yuan Force dispatch process. By the time everything was done and he came out, it was already beginning to dawn. Many of the surrounding neon lights had already been turned off, and streets started to see some outsiders working temporary jobs, heading early into the inner city. They were still in a hurry and cautious, but many now had a hint of longing in their eyes. Longing, an emotion rarely seen in outsiders, as most of them are numb. My third brother is now working in the security team. Thanks to Zi Chuan's smooth handling and Uncle Hu's care, I'm not worried about him being taken advantage of. Still, I should find something easy and safe for my parents and sister-in-law to do. Tao Yu hesitated for a moment. His parents were actually getting used to life in the abyss, so he'd better ask for their opinion first. With this thought in mind, Tao Yu made his way to Master Wang's dojo, dressed as a partner, still enjoying unobstructed access. Master Wang's residence was in a relatively central location within the inner city. Tao Yu, who had always mixed around in the south, was setting foot in this area for the first time. The exterior architecture and the cleanliness were much better than those on the outskirts, and even the proportion of people in partner outfits was higher. The rent here must be even more expensive. Here we are. Tao Yu looked up and saw the sign of Master Wang's dojo, which compared to the neighboring neon signs, appeared very standard, just a few ordinary characters reading Wang's private dojo. Adding the word private specifically indicated that this place did not recruit students publicly or open its doors to outsiders. Considering Niu Changchun's case, Master Wang probably only took in students as a favor. Given how rare the meditation technique was, it's not surprising that there were so many who wanted to support him, nor his slightly arrogant attitude towards me before. But this kind of illness is also easy to cure, just give him a couple of tough challenges. It's quite small, much smaller than the first dojo of Wan Lu. Tao Yu climbed the stairs. The building didn't have an elevator. The first floor housed a tea house, the second a bookstore, and the third was where the dojo was located. Compared to Wan Liu's first dojo, which occupied several storefronts on the first and second floors, this one was much smaller, yet the environment was also much better. There was no reception desk, no attendant, and even at the entrance stood two security guards with obvious mechanical augmentations, quite intimidating. When they saw Tao Yu walking up, one of them said in a deep voice, "This is a private club. Did he not tell you?" Tao Yu raised an eyebrow. But before he could say anything more, all of a sudden, the main door was swiftly pulled open from inside, and the short man who had previously protected Master Wang and who had just begun to grasp Gang Qi, hurried out. Sorry, the servant has no sense, they weren't yet on guard duty when we came back." Wu Tu wore an apologetic smile, then turned to scold the two guys. "Do you even have any discernment? Stopping anyone who comes by? Didn't you see the partner outfit? Couldn't you check first?" The rant was like a torrential river, spittle flying everywhere. This left the two cybernetically enhanced security guards feeling quite aggrieved. In fact, in the past, whenever they saw someone with a partner outfit, they really would check first, but later, after frequent checks, they got scolded harshly, being told not to check every partner who comes through. And now, they were met with an about-face on the spot. But as gatekeepers, all they could do was listen and endure at this moment. They had no other recourse. "Enough, who are you showing off for?" Tao Yu glanced at the dwarf and walked inside. "Please, follow me." With a smile, Wu Tu nodded and bowed to Tao Yu. His own Gang Qi had only just begun, and it was Master Wang who had transmitted the meditation technique to him and found 2 potions for him to barely grasp it. If truth be told, even if his points were sufficient, he might not pass the high-level partner evaluation. The main point was that he could produce a powerful synergy with Master Wang. But he was certain that the guy in front of him, who easily tore through his Gang Qi and subdued him in an instant, definitely had the strength of a high-level partner. Most crucial was that this involved a heretic god follower. Master Wang had even gone so far as to contact Miss Sun from the Abyss after returning and received an affirmative response. This fellow Temur is from the development zone. He's not even 19 years old, and it's only been 10 months since his talent awoke. This is utterly different from those high-level partners whose strengths are already set. Gang Qi, hey, this guy is following the path of spiritual cultivation, and currently, there is none like that in the development zone. This is totally different from the super high starting point of the exotic implant and mechanical transformation types. clearly indicating a greater potential for the future. It's very likely that he could become one of the strongest among high-level partners, or even reach the pinnacle of high-level partners. If he ever achieves that, he will be able to directly converse with any patriarch of a family from the inner city. Although Wu Tu had many thoughts in his mind, he did not stop leading the way. In the dojo that Tao Yu entered, it resembled a small yoga studio, and despite the early hour, there were already 7 students of various ages sitting cross-legged. Even Wu Tu's previous commotion and now leading Tao Yu inside didn't distract them in the slightest, as they all meditated with closed eyes. In front, a spiral incense candle that resembled sandalwood was lit, a whiff of which could clear one's mind, suggesting it was an auxiliary Yuan Force item. Wu Tu did not linger and led Tao Yu directly to a partitioned area in the back, where a room with an ancient flair, resembling a tea room, was located. Wooden tables, paintings, and potted plants highlighted a tranquil atmosphere in the room. Master Wang was already dressed in a white robe, sitting with an immortal's grace. Upon seeing Tao Yu enter, his face broke into a serene smile, and he gestured for him to sit down. "Mr. Tao, please take a seat. You investigated me." Tao Yu slowly took off his mask. Master Wang showed a helpless expression and said, "Actually, that's not the case. Miss Sun mentioned that if a heretic god follower retaliated against you, it would be on my head, so I learned." At this point, Master Wang's face showed a touch of bitterness. "I shouldn't have asked. Oh, that attacking trick you showed earlier, Master, I wonder if you could teach me. I find it quite interesting, and I'm also a bit concerned about the attack methods of a meditation master, wondering what other mental power-oriented techniques are there." With such a legitimate opportunity to press for information, Tao Yu certainly wouldn't miss it, and he also wanted to learn about the mental power-oriented techniques of the inner city's strong. Chapter 269. Reality. So that's why the Master's combat strength is so weak. After listening to Master Wang's explanation, Tao Yu nodded, understanding a lot about the circle of spirit force. Originally, Tao Yu didn't spend much time in the inner city, let alone getting in touch with the already scarce circle of spirit force users. According to Master Wang, there were usually 2 ways to convert spirit force into combat capabilities. One was the innate talents, such as telekinesis, illusion technique, charm, and hypnotism, and so on. This type was relatively simple. Once your spirit force was sufficient, you just followed your talent. However, it was also something that couldn't be compensated for later in life. The second type was an acquired method. The spirit stinger that was mentioned earlier was one example. There were also a number of skills that required the absorption of Yuan Force, and besides these, another direction that could be learned was magic. Alas, my talent is spirit vitality. Although I have a unique advantage in practicing the meditation technique, I indeed lack ways to turn it into combat strength. In fact, I have also mastered a fireball technique. When Tao Yu heard Master Wang's words, his eyes also lit up slightly. This old guy also mastered a magic spell? Sun Shiking had mentioned before that magic requires a high level of mathematical and logical thinking, and the learning period is quite lengthy. Then may I ask if the master could demonstrate it? I am really curious about magic. Sigh, the learning period for magic starts from being an apprentice, it's not just about having enough spirit force. You'll see why I didn't use it earlier. Master Wang seemed to show a helpless expression, then stood up and pressed a button next to him. A cabinet slowly opened to reveal another secret door. This is where I secretly tested the power of magic spells in the past. I haven't used it for a long time. Master Wang walked inside, and Tao Yu followed behind, with the dwarf Wu Tu closely trailing. He seemed to be specifically responsible for protecting Master Wang. After entering, Tao Yu also noticed that the interior of the secret door was quite simple, it seemed to be mainly reinforced, and there was also a piece of strange-looking huge rock in front. This is called molten rock, which has a very strong capacity for energy absorption and buffering. Mr. Tao, you can go and try it out. Tao Yu was curious about this huge rock too. He tapped on it, found the surface to be somewhat soft, then casually loaded his punch with Gang Qi and swung it. Upon contact, he realized why this rock felt a bit like hitting asphalt, it seemed as if the entire rock was dissipating the force. A punch left a mark, but that was all. It could deform without easily breaking, indeed, it was good for testing the strength of attacks. Mr. Tao, watch closely, I'm going to perform the spell now. Tao Yu immediately perked up at the words, focusing his attention on Master Wang to see if he could find any shortcuts. Then Tao Yu saw Master Wang pull out a pair of gloves edged with various scales and patterns from his chest, and in his other hand he produced a magic wand topped with something that looked like a compass, covered with many scales and equal divisions. The fireball technique is a third circle magic, known for its power. The full extent of my casting can rival the blast of a shoulder-fired explosive weapon. First, we'll draw an equilateral triangle. Afterwards, Tao Yu looked somewhat speechlessly as Master Wang did indeed begin to outline a triangle in the air, then the triangle inverted and started to transform in an incomprehensible way, constantly changing topology and shape. Master Wang's hands never stopped moving in the air, making distinct noises. To Tao Yu, it felt as if the math teacher had just taught addition within 10-digit numbers only to suddenly switch to calculus, and then in another leap, to number theory. Soon, the equilateral triangle had become just a tiny, seemingly insignificant region within the intricate design. After several minutes of drawing in the plane, as soon as Master Wang pushed forward with his hand, the plane shifted orientation, and he actually began to turn the pattern into a three-dimensional form. However, once the pattern began to take on a three-dimensional form, Tao Yu could sense the changes around him. Countless free energy converged rapidly, and the speed was increasing. A fiery silhouette of a ball had already appeared. As the pattern continued to be refined, the fireball formed faster and faster. From a trembling flame, it compressed continuously, and eventually turned into a standard orange sphere. Only occasional, mild ripples appeared on the surface, similar to the corona of the sun. After finishing, Master Wang pushed forward, and the fireball shot out, directly hitting the molten rock. Boom! Despite the fireball's small size, the explosion was as powerful as TNT, sending off a heat wave. The molten rock also showed significant deformation. Tao Yu estimated that he would need to activate Vajra indestructibility and employ the defensive method of the Kyunkan Great Shift to withstand it, yet even then, he wouldn't be able to bear many hits. It far surpassed ordinary bullets and firearms. In terms of destructive power, it was indeed strong. Worse than a shoulder-fired weapon, the fired fireball seemed to be guided and directed by his spirit force. If you were within the targeting range and couldn't outrun the fireball, you'd be almost certainly hit. In that case, if he wanted to dodge, he would have to use spiral shadow escape combined with stealth. At the very limit, he would need to resort to inherent time control. Indeed very effective and powerful, just this casting time and difficulty. You see, this is the magic spell I've mastered. Without a magic reserve, rapid casting, or the time to take out a scroll, it's simply not pragmatic for routine combat. For self-defense on a day-to-day basis, it's just spirit stinger. Chapter 270. I'm not too fond of magic, so I'd rather learn about the spirit stinger. Tao Yu said without any expression. Humph, it's not that powerful anyway, my little dragon is quite strong too. It's not a big deal, merely a pure dislike of magic. To think I've gotten the hang of it so quickly? Master Wang is truly a great teacher. Tao Yu, giddy with his newly formed skill, lavished praise that cost him nothing. Mr. Tao has sufficient spiritual cultivation, so naturally, the learning process is fast. This skill, to begin with, isn't all that profound and comes with its side effects. Master Wang wasn't surprised Tao Yu learned so quickly, because the skill, frankly, was quite simple. Is the master suggesting one might suffer backlash if their spiritual power isn't sufficient? Yes, it can only be used on those with weaker spiritual power. It won't work on someone whose spirit is only slightly weaker than yours. For instance, my earlier attempt to use it on you, Mr. Tao, resulted in backlash. Master Wang's words made Tao Yu nod in agreement. After all, it requires one's spiritual power to leave the body and strike the opponent, battling in the enemy's domain. The disparity in strength must be several times over for a positive effect. Otherwise, it's very likely that one would harm the enemy at the cost of greater damage to oneself. Like Tao Yu himself, with the talent of fist intention materialized, his thoughts were more refined, but most of the time, they served more as a support for control, rather than direct damage. It's not that direct harm couldn't be inflicted, but the exponential decay of spiritual power once detached made the cost outweigh the benefits. Opting for the best cost-effectiveness was key. If Master Wang used this power against Wu Tu, the effects would be significant, surely a cinch, but using it on Tao Yu, even without considering spiritual immunity, would be giving it away for free. A skill with strong specificity. Sometimes it can work wonders, but sometimes it may have negative effects. I'll be mindful of that. It's best that Mr. Tao understands this. Master Wang nodded with a smile, really worried his student might be dissatisfied and stir up trouble. Although he had taken a loss this time and even taught the other party a minor skill, if he could resolve this misunderstanding and even convert hostility into friendship, that would be excellent. So young, and so powerful, his future was boundless. Tao Yu was also immersed in the variations of this skill. Spirit Stinger, cultivate thoughts, shape the thoughts into needle-like forms for storage, and launch a surprise attack on the enemy when it counts. The closer the distance, the better the effect, with the best effect when making direct eye contact. The backlash of thoughts will affect oneself. The skill requires one to refine several thoughts into needle-like forms in advance, ready for sudden use. One could attack an enemy with just a glance. With the high-quality spiritual power and thoughts brought by my second deification meditation technique, complemented by the talent for fist intention and even enhanced by the Big Dipper's death intent, my offensive power is definitely not low, especially in taking the enemy by surprise. As for the backlash, spiritual immunity couldn't care less. Looking at the 500 points of deification cost, Tao Yu didn't hesitate. Deification. Spirit Stinger improved, the aforementioned details, with the added ability to now be independent of the needle-like form, allowing you to modify the form of the thought presence according to your own ideas. Seeing this, Tao Yu's eyes lit up slightly, as he began to grasp the possibilities of modification. For example, he could try to turn thoughts into ropes to bind the opponent's will, or into spikes to nail down the opponent. The effect might not be outstanding due to the forceful use after leaving the body, but there's no doubt that it adds variety to his assistive capabilities. It could also complement skills like soul shifting. I really like this ability, it might just work wonders at the right moment. Thank you for your selfless teaching, Master Wang. Tao Yu glanced at Master Wang, realizing now that, in fact, the combination of Master Wang and the dwarf was very strong. If Master Wang used Spirit Stinger to control the enemy, even if the dwarf had only just begun to grasp Gang Qi, he could score significantly. No wonder they were inseparable. No problem, as long as you like it. However, just as they were enjoying their conversation, suddenly one of the two door guardians came over to ask for instructions. Captain Wu, someone is looking for Master Wang. Who is it? If it's a partner, then brush them off. Wu Tu had just reprimanded the two of them, telling them not to look down on people, and now he immediately started to change his tune. Yet, the door guard immediately said. No, it's the third young master of the Longzi clan. The Longzi clan. Wu Tu did not speak, but Master Wang seemed a bit surprised, and then nodded and said. In that case, please have him come over. Since Master Wang still has guests, I won't disturb you any further. Tao Yu also prepared to leave. Originally he might have exchanged a few words of courtesy, and it would not have been good to go back on his word, but now it seemed just right. This made Master Wang hurry to speak. I still wanted to exchange insights with Mr. Tao. This visitor is only coming to ask for a visualization diagram for the meditation technique, it should be quick. Seeing that there was a chance to turn hostility into friendship and make a good connection, Master Wang actually did want to talk more with Tao Yu, to provide some pointers on the spiritual aspect as well. After all, it would be a very beneficial investment. For him, it cost nothing, a win-win situation. Hearing Master Wang's words, Tao Yu did not insist, for how could he, as this person was an old fox, and indeed, there was value in listening to talks of many years of experience. When Master Wang showed an inclination to be friendly, naturally, Tao Yu wouldn't keep a cold face either. One needs to be forceful when it's called for, but in situations requiring diplomacy, one must indeed be able to blend in. There's no need to be overly familiar, but one cannot be too proud and aloof either. Soon, the door guard brought over a figure covered in lizard-like skin, but dressed in a formal suit. The lizard's vertical pupils, the sharp teeth filling its mouth, and the uneven skin, were truly somewhat hideous. Upon entering, this third young master of the Longzi clan took notice of Tao Yu and Wu Tu, saw Tao Yu's partner attire, but did not comment further. Instead, he politely clasped his hands toward Master Wang. I've seen Master Wang. Although Master Wang had appeared a bit incompetent in front of Tao Yu, his stature was unquestionable. Those from the major families who wanted to learn the meditation technique had to seek these meditation masters. Young friend, you've come personally, what guidance might you have? Master Wang also did not put on airs, and said with a smile. The lizardman looked at Tao Yu and Wu Tu upon hearing this, seemingly hesitant. There's no harm in speaking, they are trustworthy friends. It's like this, the younger generation has received information that Master Wang has identified a follower of the evil god. At this point, Master Wang's originally amiable expression instantly became calmer, growing more neutral. Oh? Does he have some relation to you? Followers of the evil god were definitely not to be associated with. If this was in any way related, then it was beyond help. Even a report would be turned against them. Master Wang was now entering into a mode of guarded conversation. No, 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 how could that be? Our clan is a respectable one. The lizardman was startled, such an accusation was not to be taken lightly. He then said thoughtfully. It's like this, we've received a tip that the Chaoyang Society might have some connection to the followers of the evil god. I wonder if this person could possibly... At this point, the lizardman's words carried a significant implication. Whether there could be a connection or not, it all comes down to your word. Chapter 271. Master Wang was somewhat speechless at this moment. You just blurt that out like it's nothing. But then he remembered that it was he who had just said everyone present could be trusted. In fact, Master Wang truly thought the other party was just there to ask for a visualization diagram. This kind of request was common for him, and he was used to it. Core disciples of major families, if they had some talent in meditation, generally sought one out. Even those without spiritual talent would want a meditation technique to compensate for their weaknesses. Not to mention the heretic god followers, they had many attacks targeted at the mind. If one had a clear weakness and was suddenly attacked there, even the stronger might easily be overturned. There was also the absorption skill. Meditation technique could also more easily dissolve the pollution of the skill. He thought the matter was completely above board and this was a good opportunity to show this promising young man his social status. He didn't want the initial impression from the Night Watcher to solidify. And now, what on earth was this? Master Wang had also heard a bit about Chaoyang Society lately and knew about the incident where Longzi clan was hit. But since the pain wasn't his own, he had simply enjoyed watching the drama unfold from afar. Now, seeing the third young master of the Longzi clan hinting at such matters, he knew the Longzi clan must have suffered no small loss, and it may not just be an issue of face. Their clan leader's injuries might be very serious. Master Wang's skill in meditation technique had surpassed the traditional LV5 limit, reaching LV6, so his thoughts were extremely quick. He quickly sorted out the issues and understood the other party's intentions. Being framed for something. As for the skirmishes between the inner city and the outer city, the floating city wouldn't really care about them, nor would it matter to them if a force within the inner city got wiped out. After all, these things can't shake the foundation. But heretic god followers are different, they are extremists who have actions that could extinguish the flame of civilization. Most rational adults are constrained by personal interests and powerful connections, but lunatics are not. If they were just ordinary lunatics without reason, that would be bad enough, but heretic god followers are organized and premeditated, truly unpredictable. Even if their strength is equal, if a lunatic attacks a normal person unexpectedly, the normal person is likely to break down in tears. If bowing down and kowtowing could guarantee that the lunatic would never bother them again, then most people would probably do it. This kind of accusation is such that many times, a wrongful killing is preferable to letting someone go free, evidence is often deemed unnecessary. And even if an investigation proves there's no connection, one would still be skinned alive. It could be said to be a very malicious tactic. The leader of Chaoyang Society once refused the recruiting efforts of Floating City, but he's different from those unsavory rebel organizations, he's known for being upright in his actions, which Master Wang had also heard of. I truly apologize, young master, but I am a person who likes to be realistic. If it's about this matter, then please return, said Master Wang with all the righteousness he could muster. He knew that since the other party came asking for a favor, they must have promised many benefits. But aside from his general dislike of involving himself in such things, even if he was tempted, now that Mr. Tao had heard everything, he'd definitely refuse outright. After all, the man could report to the heavens. The lizardman hadn't expected Master Wang to be so decisive in rejecting the offer without even hearing about the benefits, and after a brief moment of shock, he sighed. It seems there's no connection between them then. I was overthinking. I just received a tip and thought I'd ask. Here's a small gift from our family. My good-for-nothing brother is about to come of age, and I'd like to ask for your diligent effort for his visualization diagram, he said. The lizardman kept a straight face as he handed the gift box to Wu Tu, who passed it to Master Wang. Master Wang, without even looking inside the box, said with a beaming smile. Why the formality? Rest assured, when he comes by, I will reserve an opportunity to imprint for him. Then I shall take my leave, the lizardman said. After giving a nod to Tao Yu and Wu Tu, he left straight away. He was just probing. Once he saw the resistance, he couldn't directly state his purpose anymore. Swiftly, he shifted the conversation to his brother's practice of meditation technique, leaving no handle to be held against him. After all, received a tip, just asked casually. For heretic god followers, everyone's duty is to eliminate them. It was only after he left that Master Wang shook his head and said to Tao Yu with a chuckle. Mr. Tao must think this is quite the spectacle. I don't actually take on such business, but they're probably pressed by the president of Chaoyang Society, desperate for a solution. Master Wang even made a point of explaining this to Tao Yu. I understand, the master is highly esteemed. There's actually some substance to this place. Tao Yu left the Wang private club, and that was that. And if you think about it, the two parties currently have a little mutual favor going on. If there's some small convenient matter, taking the initiative to seek help from the other party will definitely not be turned down. Likewise, if the other party needs help with something, and it's just a matter of convenience, then lending a hand is no big deal. Anything more involved would require negotiating a price from both sides. Tao Yu himself was not someone aloof and proud. He didn't mind cultivating a wide network of good relationships. When it's time to tear off the mask, you have to be decisive, and when there's no need to make enemies, don't go looking for trouble. The casual conversation afterwards indeed brought some help to himself. However, at this moment, Tao Yu's bracelet began to vibrate, making his expression brighten. He immediately chose to answer. I'm back. Where are you? How did you get wrapped up in heretic god follower stuff again? I'm in the inner city, just trying to make some extra cash. Tao Yu hinted frantically. You're quite generous with your money, but rapidly boosting your strength is indeed the right way to go. Find a deserted place and open the location. Okay. Tao Yu obediently agreed and quickly made his way toward an abandoned building he remembered from the road. The building was overgrown with weeds, and it wasn't clear what had happened, but the surface of the building was black as if it had been burned by fire. However, having seen many post-apocalyptic scenes in the abyss, Tao Yu was unfazed by such abandoned buildings. However, when Tao Yu went to the rooftop, he saw several gang members engaged in some transaction. Seeing Tao Yu arrive, they were all startled. Especially when they saw the outfit of Tao Yu's partner, someone immediately put their hands on their head and squatted down, also saying, "Don't kill me." This left Tao Yu somewhat speechless. He then lowered his voice and snorted coldly. Scram! Hearing Tao Yu's words, the gang members, whether lying on the ground or with their hands on their heads, immediately understood they were not the target of a bust. They ran off, faster than each other, disappearing in a flash. This must be what Wang Gaodan was talking about, the fourth-tier security zone, a completely lawless land. There's no surveillance, few people and almost no one ever comes here, except for some gang members who might do unsavory things here. As someone who possesses the art of corpse refinement, Tao Yu could tell that the building had a tendency to evolve into the land of extreme yin. There must have been quite a few deaths here. But at least on the surface, there were no visible remains or anything. So, Tao Yu arrived at the rooftop and turned on the location sharing. It didn't take long for something similar to the semi-transparent shadow that appeared last time Sun Shiking came over to flicker, and the graceful figure of Sun Shiu appeared on the rooftop. The semi-transparent camouflage covering her began to fade away, revealing the familiar tight combat suit, and she also took out a similar spherical device to shield the surrounding environment. Her pretty and beautiful face held a trace of joy, which made Tao Yu a bit infatuated. An eternally beautiful sight. What? Disappointed it's not Shiking. Sun Shiu stood with her hands behind her back, circling Tao Yu and said teasingly. Last time, Sun Shiking really showed her that embarrassing photo of himself, and Tao Yu wondered if that was why the wealthy girl hadn't held back and had beaten him soundly. What are you talking about? He zones out just because you look like you. Tao Yu wrapped his arm around Sun Shiu's slender waist, inhaling the faint fragrance that tickled his nose, and he almost lost control on the spot. He quickly cooled himself down with a meditation technique before returning to normal. But his hand involuntarily slid lower. You really have the constitution of a lucky devil. You must have some strange fortune bonus on you, running into a heretic god-follower incident again. Those lunatics don't care about profit or loss, it's best to avoid them as much as possible. Sun Xiu didn't resist Tao Yu's movements at all, instead, she snuggled closer into his embrace. That's just some easy money, if it comes to my doorstep, why would I say no? Hehe, so Chang Lixu the heroine is also if it comes to my doorstep, why say no, hey. Sun Xiu's words made Tao Yu's scalp tingle. Good grief, where did you get that from? How do you know about that? Chapter 272. Deification Enhancement. She's practically marinated in your scent, it's so strong I could hardly miss it, she teased. Sun Xiu gave Tao Yu a flirty sideways glance. All one could say was, she truly lived up to being a succubus. Seeing Tao Yu's embarrassed and awkward expression, Sun Xiu hooked her soft and fragrant hand around Tao Yu's neck, while the other gently pinched him. But if you're still interested in other women, I must be slacking off. How embarrassing. Tao Yu felt the fragrance at the tip of his nose grow even stronger. Ahem, have you been there already? What you and Shiking agreed upon is quite interesting. Such potential items are worth a personal visit. I've already asked those monks in the Dharma Hall in Shaolin to prepare for sea travel. Vehicles will be arranged here to meet them. Sun Xiu kept fiddling with her hands, making it difficult for Tao Yu to focus, even with his meditation technique, internally crying foul. This time, I first saw your pet and the zombies. Your alien has started mutating and laid an egg. But it looks different from a normal queen. Then, regarding the two chosen ones in Xiang Yang, they swore to protect it to death. Since you specially instructed Shiking and your master, I didn't want to force the issue, so I let them handle it. Sun Xiu spoke in an utterly charming and silky voice, sending Tao Yu's mind adrift and mindlessly nodding in agreement. From Shaolin, I learned that you went to Zhongnan Mountain, so I took another trip to Zhongnan Mountain. I made the remaining third-generation disciples set sail as well. I met with Xialong Nu and Li Machu, but what are you thinking? Xialong Nu is not better than Cheng Lixu. Cheng Lixu seems so silly that it's contagious. Listening to Sun Xiu's coy and seductive voice, Tao Yu himself felt somewhat embarrassed. The girl really had traveled a long way just to find him. At least you still have some conscience. Sun Xiu's eyes glowed like rubies as she watched Tao Yu's expressions with a light chuckle, before she pushed him down to the ground, revealing a mischievously evil smile. You can mess around outside all you want, but you can't hide it. You have to spread your reputation. Hearing Sun Xiu's words, Tao Yu was stunned for a moment, but then quickly realized her point. That way, others would likely not suspect the nature of his relationship with her. Truth be told, Tao Yu was quite moved by her remark. However, that's only if you still have the chance, because this time, I won't hold back. Tao Yu vaguely sensed something ominous and quickly placed his hand on Sun Xiu's forehead as the taming seed began to take root. Wait a second, here. But Sun Xiu didn't resist, instead harmoniously receiving the taming technique once again. Hehe, what's wrong, feeling shy? Don't worry, there are barriers. Then, in the next moment, Tao Yu truly experienced what it meant not to hold back. You pass for today. I've looked over those few, they're not too bad, they don't disgrace us. Approved. Sun Xiu, wrapped in a semi-transparent fluid, gradually became invisible, then shot up into the sky and quickly departed. And Tao Yu, with legs wobbly, stood up leaning against the wall beside him, took a deep breath, and felt quite content with the once deified dragon elephant Pruchna and 9 Yang divine skills. But now he was reaching his limit. Relying on one proof forever proof, he wasn't afraid of weakness, but another round would probably knock him out cold. Humph, I'll turn the tables on you sooner or later. As Tao Yu reflected, he shakily began stuffing nutrient paste into his mouth. The next moment, the rich girl suddenly returned, catching Tao Yu off guard. Almost forgot, I just got back, and it's another 5 days back. Come here, you. Tao Yu felt a terrifying burst of telekinesis bind him and pull him into Sun Xiu's embrace, completely wrapped around and nearly unable to breathe. Then he was whisked away towards the floating city, to be indulgently pampered and disciplined for 5 days. 5 days later, back in his room, Tao Yu felt a hint of zen clinging to him. As he casually nibbled on ginseng slices and chewed them, a transcendent and ethereal presence shone from his eyes. Now Tao Yu felt he could completely ignore a lineup of beauties in their most tempting postures right in front of him, without so much as a sideways glance. Only goes to show, she truly is a succubus, hey. Tao Yu's face was expressionless, but a smile appeared when he thought of the rich girl. He could tell that she was actually a bit jealous, but since their relationship could not be made public, she couldn't provide much additional support. It was still mostly up to him to make money, so she probably saw this as a form of compensation. Additionally, according to her advice of not hiding and revealing his reputation, that indeed was also a method of self-protection. However, it's a bit embarrassing to need her to come up with this. I'm not strong enough yet. Reaching this level in just 10 months, even displaying only a part of his gang chi cultivation, had already been incredibly fast and almost unbelievable to others. But he still felt it wasn't enough. Afterward, Tao Yu, feeling his Yuan Force had reached 800,000, also began to ponder where to add enhancements. It wasn't just a pure allowance money bag from the rich girl, it was for the purchase of her own vast number of prairie soldiers and the expense of the newly persuaded coaches. Although he could be considered to have shares, acting as a shareholder. But the dividends a shareholder receives do not conflict with the salary from his work. And those prairie soldiers were also first for his use, to be taken back once finished with them. Compared to the bonanza of the last pioneering, this time indeed much was missing, and both the worlds of the Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber and the legend of the Condor heroes were seriously homogenized. The only treasure, Old Man Zhang Sanfan, had also gone north. Given the need to return to Xiangyang first to deal with the Titan problem, it could be certain that the profits for the following period would not be comparable to last time. It's already not bad, let's just leave it at that for now. The rich girl has been delayed too much and needs to return. Unfortunately, she cannot come to pick me up, but luckily I have already ordered a flying device. I should be able to stay in this world for another month or so. In his heart, Tao Yu speculated he had agreed with the rich girl that after 1 or 2 months, she would visit Xiangyang again. By then, she could take him back to the base for a visit, as his own flying device had limited payload capacity, and this time he wanted to bring back more snake eggs. As for the jade bees, it was not a big issue, the rich girl planned to take little dragon girl back as her inner strength and meridian teacher, and she would bring a few jade bees back with her. Although the inner power system wasn't of much help to the rich girl, she could still explore it. Moreover, after the Great Tang system entered, and even later when higher levels of cultivation systems emerged, they would inevitably help her. The rich girl was also forward-thinking in her studies, her sense of smell too keen to be doubted. The strength enhancement this time still mainly comes from the Dragon Elephant Prujna skill. Although its price falls short compared to those divine skills, it is indeed a good item. Tao Yu did not hesitate, spending 200,000 Yuan Force directly. The Dragon Elephant Prujna skill immediately began to transform. And Tao Yu soon discovered that there seemed to be some connection between the Dragon Elephant Prujna skill and the all forms inclusive. A cracking sound even emerged from all his bones. Indeed, the cost-effectiveness of a second deification was far from that of the first, but each one revealed some unique traits. Tao Yu's eyes lit up slightly when he looked at the Dragon Elephant Prujna skill. Dragon Elephant Prujna skill Mk2. The enhancement of each level's spirit and vitality further increased, and he could feel a trace of the fist intention relating to force. The fist intention of force. Tao Yu didn't know what that was, but he had a vague feeling about it. He raised his hand, making a fist. Boom! A sound explosion echoed, creating a gust of wind in the empty room. This is not the strengthening of the body. Tao Yu mumbled to himself, this seemed a bit similar to the death notion from Big Dipper's guidance. Although the death notion of the Big Dipper wasn't as strong, and it manifested more in the extension of true Yuan, enabling his true Yuan to erode other energies, and also allowing it to sync with fist intention. But this force notion was different, its effect mainly being in the realm of absolute physical attack. The consumption was of spirit and vitality in unison, not just the physical strength and chi blood. My goodness, indeed, the traits from a second deification always bring out some strange, high-quality abilities, like opening a blind box. Tao Yu looked at his remaining 600,000 plus Yuan Force and fell silent for a moment. Truth be told, further deification would make everyday use quite strained, but having just felt the connection with the all forms inclusive, he was eager to know what it was. Let's double it, keep the multiplier low, stretch it out, anyway, I'm familiar with all the skills I need to be, just lacking some for emergency use. No longer indecisive, Tao Yu once again invested Yuan Force into the all forms inclusive. This directly required a consumption of 600,000. Compared to the stable Dragon Elephant Prujna skill, the response from the all forms inclusive was obviously much more intense. Tao Yu even unconsciously entered into demonization. A black carapace layer continuously covered him. During demonization, crackling noises came from his spine as spurs burst from it, spreading down to the tail. Tao Yu couldn't help assuming the stance of the stance skill, harmonizing to absorb the ceaseless qi blood surging from all over his body with the qi and blood pills, and then he took a long breath. Chapter 273. Mission. Shut up already. This is a place to live, go practice in the practice room. Swearing and cursing rose from downstairs. Tao Yu didn't respond, but he still slowly executed the final moves and then turned his attention to the changes in his abilities. All shapes mastery modified. First, human is fundamental. By enlightenment of a whiff of the root ambience, one can transform spirit, energy, and mind at will. Seeing this, Tao Yu couldn't help but reveal a grin. Firstly, the extra maximum cap on qi blood and gang qi was already quite good. Before, he could only rely on dragon spine to refine blood gang, but now he could do so anytime, anywhere throughout his body. Besides, he could also replenish his spirit and true yuan with qi blood, and the same was true for the rest. When he previously struck Little Dragon, Tao Yu had indeed felt that attacks primarily consuming true yuan might lead to it falling short, and it was only after incorporating a round of deification into the 9 Yang divine skill that things began to fare slightly better. But now it didn't matter. With the strong combat sustainability effect from one proof forever proof, as long as he had any kind of reserve energy, he could nearly burst out with full force. Yuan Force is squeezed dry again. This month while moving, let them come over, and in the meantime, do some tasks in the real world to supplement the family income. Tao Yu recalled the easy jobs from before, 75,000 in one night, which not only covered the expenses for cultivation but also left quite a bit of surplus. There shouldn't be many in the inner city who could pose a threat to me now, time to seek out those high reward targets. The poorer one is, the craftier one gets. Tao Yu now truly felt he was poor. Another poor day. Early in the morning, Tao Yu stretched and his whole body cracked and popped as qi blood surged within him like mercury. I'll go talk to mom and dad first, see what kind of work they want. Tao Yu muttered to himself. Panda and the others hadn't returned yet, and there was a meditation master too. Finding a couple of safe and easy jobs was very simple, especially since they weren't looking for high salaries. Still, Tao Yu decided to first ask for their preferences. Taking the elevator down, Tao Yu casually picked a nearby diner and ordered a bowl of fresh broth noodles for 8 Yuan Force. Watching the skilled motions with which the owner, who had mechanical prosthetic limbs, prepared the ingredients, Tao Yu knew the taste wouldn't disappoint. Indeed, the soup was rich and savory, and the noodles were chewy and elastic. Stuffing a mouthful of noodles soaked in the thick soup, it truly was a feast for the taste buds. Eating such a bowl early in the morning made him much happier. Living in the inner city would indeed be a lot more expensive if you always eat out, but since we've already ordered ingredients to cook ourselves, mom and dad should be able to accept it. Reflecting on this, Tao Yu headed toward the South City Gate. Passing by the mission hall, he also took the opportunity to check inside, and saw Miss Mag, whose expression hadn't changed much since he last saw her. It seemed she was somewhat bored, repeatedly wiping an already clean table back and forth. Miss Mag, are there any good tasks recently? The sound of Tao Yu's voice made Miss Mag look up. She had seen him once before this return, and in just a few days she no longer needed any time to react, resuming her teasing manner. What, not taking shortcuts anymore? Haha, I wish I could. What kind of task do you want? Mag didn't mind chatting with Tao Yu. When she directly granted Tao Yu middle partner status, he knew this Miss Mag was definitely not just responsible for cleaning, she had a lot of power in her hands. I'm looking for high reward tasks with some leads. Tao Yu said with a grin, causing Mag to glance at him sidelong. Here we go again. The last few you took on had everyone on tenterhooks for a while. Don't always do that, you'll make enemies. Mag thought Tao Yu, after some time, wanted to cash in on those collection tasks again. No, not collection tasks. I'm looking for ones that pay more, anything above 100,000 would be great. Tao Yu chuckled. The difficulty of the collection tasks are usually middle partner level and above, but their nature is safe. So, even if some are quite tedious, troublesome, or could even embarrass a middle partner, they rarely involve danger. Such tasks are not too expensive. A few thousand in rewards are considered good, and very few exceed 10,000. Those that do are definitely quite a hassle. But hunting missions are definitely different. Last time I captured a mad mud monster, even without counting the heretic god followers, there was a reward of tens of thousands, and for a top mid-level partner's prey, a live capture could fetch up to 100,000. That wasn't impossible. It's just that these kinds of missions, where life and death combat is inevitable, are seldom taken on by solo partners. The risks are just too great. Even if one is truly stronger than the opponent, factors such as environment, terrain, state of being, luck, and hidden cards all stacked together could easily lead to a disaster. It's only for earning some money, why risk one's life? Those with high bounties are definitely thorny characters. Have you been triggered by something? How long has it been since you last returned to the abyss? How long did you stay in the abyss before coming here? Miss Mag asked Tao Yu curiously. People do occasionally inquire about such missions, but those are usually from high-level partners. And the completion rates for those are actually quite average, with news of high-level partners failing also emerging from time to time. It's not unheard of for high-level partners to be killed by mid-level partners either. Downward compatibility in missions does offer some leeway for error, but there's a limit to it, and with various negatives adding up, one might just meet with a cold end. Actually, I am quite strong. Tao Yu extended his finger in front of Miss Mag, emitting a wisp of gang qi. Although Miss Mag's delicate face still showed no expression, Tao Yu could feel her emotional shock. The shock was normal, she knew her own identity and the time involved. So far, there was no one who knew and was not shocked, but Tao Yu felt that this level of surprise was no big deal, having initially understated his own talents, along with a stroke of fortune. Even now, had it become known that he had used a fragment of the heart of the world, he could still hold steady. This demonstration of strength, to exchange for corresponding benefits, was something Tao Yu had done quite a few times before, just needed to grasp the right degree. I really underestimated you, kid, you've got direct access to high level without any barriers now. Mag murmured softly, then reached out and gave Tao Yu a pat. Come with me, let's talk inside. Tao Yu followed Miss Mag into the room where his mid-level partner suit had been issued to him initially. The room was still as cluttered as before, starkly different from when Miss Mag had been cleaning the main hall, just like the contrast between her personality and appearance. Then, he saw the tiny Miss Mag jump directly onto the table to sit. The last time you left, I already felt that you were not weak, but I didn't expect you to improve this quickly. Mag said with some emotion. Although I don't know what your true talent is, or what fortune you've encountered, being able to grow steadily to this point before revealing yourself, your temperament is more composed than most of the young geniuses I've seen. You flatter me, Miss Mag. Tao Yu said with a smile. Being able to issue his mid-level partner status, Miss Mag must be of a level equivalent to a high-level partner anyhow. There's no flattery here. Currently, in the new development zone, excluding those from Floating City, there are only 7 people in the inner city suspected to be of high-level partner caliber. Apart from you, 5 of them are from the very top powers of the inner city, and the remaining 2 are the offspring of nearly top-tier powers. She paused at this point. And you're the only exception, and even an outsider, following the gang qi path. I've just been lucky, and my income is rather high. This isn't something that can be solved with income alone. If Yuan Force could simply be poured into someone to bring out strength, there wouldn't be so many troublesome matters. Mag rolled her digital Byakugan but didn't dwell on the issue any further. High talent plus a fortunate encounter, she didn't want to probe without a sense of boundaries. The relationship between them was still pleasant, there was no need to potentially bring up issues, when things were quite good as they were. Afterward, Miss Mag pulled out a data line and inserted it into her own neck. I'll help you look, but there are still issues you need to be aware of. Chapter 274, Move In. Thank you, Miss Mag, and may Miss Mag forever be beautiful. Tao Yu waved at Miss Mag with a beaming smile, grateful for the help that saved him a lot of trouble. At this moment, Tao Yu's task watch displayed information for 5 new bounty tasks. These tasks were not the kind you take and then complete, rather, anyone who completed them could turn them in. Actually, the highest reward in the task hall currently reached 1 million and was for a high-ranking partner who had fallen into the worship of the evil god, possessed great strength, and had slain the former captain of the inner city's sheriff team. However, there were no additional messages about that task. Ever since the heretic god follower had killed the sheriff team captain, he hadn't shown his face again. No one knew whether he was in the abyss or the real world, he might have even entered the grey mist, so the task was left unresolved. Most of the tasks that continually increased in reward amount were like this, without the slightest clue. At most, there was an old photo with little to no reference value. Tao Yu, on the other hand, had specifically kept these 5 tasks because, although the most expensive was only 180,000, they all had some detailed information or a recent area of activity. One even had the outer city as the location of activity. The outer city sure has good confidentiality measures. Lived here for so many years and somehow never heard of a serial killer among us. Tao Yu shook his head as he looked at the task. Bounty for serial killer number 11, a sheriff suspected of having gone mad due to absorbing a skill and who has committed repeated and bloody crimes, likely needing to kill one person every day. During the incident in the inner city, he already had killed over 30 victims, and he has now been hiding in the outer city for 5 years. Based on the way some corpses were treated, it is clear he continuously carries out these bloody crimes. The last victim he mutilated was found 2 days ago, in the Eastgate district. A serial killer who had been killing in the outer city for 5 years, and yet Tao Yu, who had lived in the outer city for 18 years, hadn't heard even a whisper about him, made him rather speechless indeed. But upon further reflection, the guy only killed one person every day, which, compared to the basic situation in the outer city, perhaps wasn't too surprising. The daily emergence of awakened individuals easily made up for it, plus there were those killed by the grey mist's monsters at night, barely causing a ripple. It's really time to move to the inner city. Although the inner city is chaotic too, at least the place I've rented nearby is better, much better than the outer city. Tao Yu felt a bit melancholic. The reward for this bounty task was 120,000. 5 years ago, the sheriff named George already had considerable strength, belonging to the main insect-type hybrid inlays, adept at disguise, assassination and dexterity. Moreover, his madness was due to absorbing a high-pollution powerful skill, and it was suspected that needing to kill might be a side effect. Over these 5 years, 2 teams had encountered him. The first team was made of 2 mid-level partners with 4 junior partners, who suffered heavy casualties. The second team consisted of all mid-level partners. They had 1 person injured in an ambush by the perpetrator, who then escaped. It was specifically noted that a long-established mid-level partner called Wilderness Hunter was in the second team, but they were also unable to apprehend him. Senior partners have also searched but didn't find him. Since he never showed his face, he probably isn't simply mad, but quite cunning. Tao Yu browsed through the intelligence and made some assessments. Since the last discovery of a body was 2 days ago, this case was still worthy of investigation, but first, he had to get his family into the inner city. Move to the inner city. After calling his family back for a short family meeting, Tao Yu's words once again rendered them speechless. When he returned, Tao Yu had briefly mentioned it to Tao Long, but it was just a passing remark at the time, and they hadn't expected that within a few days, the place would already have been rented. I said, this is charged to the company's account, there's no need to pay. Tao Yu shifted the concept slightly. Inner city. Brother, are we really moving to the inner city? Tao Shi, who often roamed outside, was the most excited at the scene. Yes, the place has already been rented. It would be such a waste if you guys don't move there, especially when I'm off to the abyss. It's money spent every day. Let's move. At this point, Tao Long couldn't raise any other objections. He only wanted to take the furniture with them. Hey, what are you bringing? My friend has already arranged for a set to be delivered to us, much better ones. Just pack the essentials, and let's go. Maybe my wife and I should stay here. Tao Tong hesitated. Now that he had regained the use of his legs and was still working at the sheriff team, he didn't need to be looked after, and it seemed normal to live separately. It was a great blessing to have his legs restored. What are you thinking? I'm counting on you to hold the fort when I'm not around. What if my family gets bullied when there's no one at home? Tao Yu didn't use any other reasons to persuade him, instead, he directly put the responsibility on his third brother, effectively cutting off any rebuttal. To refuse now would seem as if he was trying to shirk his responsibilities. Furthermore, once the third brother was restored, he indeed became the second strongest in the family after Tao Yu. Well, there might be a significant gap between first and second, but he was still suitable for holding the fort. Demonization brought about an acceleration. With the existing enhancements from dynamic vision and firearms, and now with inner strength, his capabilities were indeed formidable. Now that you are familiar with things, I will teach you some new skills. Tao Yu was ready to start imparting the muscle-changing and bone-forging scripture to them, taking it step by step. Having a partner package, Tao Yu's arrival with his family didn't cause any additional ripples. His parents had dealt with society for decades, and although they were somewhat nervous, they did their best not to show it. It was only the third brother's wife who seemed a bit nervous about coming to the inner city, while Tao Xie appeared somewhat excited. Don't worry, all the formalities have been completed. You now have the standard residence status of inner city citizens, Tao Yu reassured them, urging them not to be so tense, before leading them straight back to the rental property. The door to the rented room was open, with people moving various decorations inside in a constant stream. Panda and Zhonglei were outside, giving orders and doing a colorful job of it. The sight of so many people helping with the move also caught the attention of several neighbors, many of whom watched curiously from the sidelines. Upon seeing Tao Yu and his family, Panda's eyes brightened, and he came over with a smile. Brother Tao, uncle, aunt, if you have any issues in the future, just get in touch with our company's office. All these pieces of furniture are from the abyss, free of charge. Panda personally brought a few movers over and began to cram the Las Vegas furniture into Tao Yu's rented room. He also brought along the newly appointed head of the Dada Company's current world office, Zhonglei. Zhonglei, an outsider himself, with grade A talent, was brave and combative. Now that he had entered the inner city, he was quite suitable for this position. Moreover, Zhonglei's family was part of the sheriff's office, so whether it was Uncle Hu's side or Tao Tong's, there was another layer of relationship, a natural closeness. Uncle, aunt, brother Tao, rest assured. I will mainly be staying in the current world handling some company errands. If you have any issues, just talk to me, Zhonglei said with a broad, assuring smile, taking charge of everything. He knew Tao Yu had acquired Gang Qi. At least a direct connection to a senior partner. Not to mention, he was in the new development zone and so young, his future was boundless. Now that they saw Panda and Zhonglei's attitude, the family got a real sense of the scope of Tao Yu's influence and understood his status in the company's division of profits. Good, good, all good children, Tao Long said, not quite knowing what else to say. Tao Yu let them settle into the house for a while, letting them arrange the furniture, and then turned to his third brother. Brother, you're working with the sheriff's office now, do you have any new clues or insights about that serial killer Assassin 11? Assassin 11? Truth be told, I didn't even know there was such a character in the outsider city. But today, while I was on duty, I heard that our South City had a death. The cause of death was determined to be murder, likely by his hand. But I heard Uncle Hu say we shouldn't bother too much about it, it's always been something we don't pay much mind to. Tao Tong's words made Tao Yu nod in understanding. The outsider sheriff's indifference made sense. Even though the deputies were well trained and theoretically could surround and shoot the assailant with a small team, it was very difficult because the killer always hid in the shadows. If they were ambushed instead, the killer could wipe out an entire squad. So it always ended up with just cleaning up afterward, at most just to put on a show of force, since it wasn't worth the sheriff's office spending so much effort over one person a day. While the deputies represented the strongest force in the outsider city, they had plenty of other duties, including maintaining the balance between the various gangs and fortresses and ensuring overall stability. In comparison, daily gang fights had more impact than a single killer. An Assassin 11 still possessed some rationality and didn't actively target the deputies, so both sides were in a state of live and let live. Though we don't intervene, we have to report any information on him to the task hall ASAP. They're probably still doing an autopsy now. Want me to take you there? Sure. You're not eyeing the bounty mission, are you? This guy is troublesome, even mid-level partners have stumbled over him. Tao Tong, aware of his limited perspective, could not help but caution his brother. After all, as family, his primary concern was safety. I have an idea of what I'm doing. Just casually inquiring. Chapter 275. A small matter. Number 11 is really becoming a nuisance, are there no one to take him out in the abyss? Zi Chuan looked at the withered corpse in front of him, extinguished the cigarette butt in his hand by pinching it between his fingers, and rubbed his forehead. It had been 5 years, and this guy had been squatting in the outer city, refusing to leave. He would be much safer searching for natives in the abyss. But this guy had plenty of time in the present world. Maybe his location in the abyss is very dangerous. As the person in charge of the outer city's southern district, Tao Yu had to show up too. The murders by number 11 all involved blood-sucking, leaving the victims dry as mummies, so they were easy to identify. The pattern of his activities was also regular, with roughly 10 days a month spent in the abyss and the rest in the present world. Once he began his killing spree, bodies were sure to be found over a continuous span of time. Not finding any didn't mean he didn't kill, it simply meant the bodies hadn't been discovered yet. Let's leave it at that. Today's trail is in the South City District. Notify the mission hall, pay extra attention even though he mostly targets those who are alone, but still arrange for more manpower around your nephew's family. Ziyi Chuan patted Tao Yu's shoulder. Number 11's issue had become a tired topic, like eczema that just wouldn't go away. They were all familiar with the routine, just follow procedure. Arriving in person signified high importance, and that was that. Right at that moment, however, a member of the security team hurried over and said, "Captain Ziyi Chuan, Captain Tao Yu, a mid-level partner has come with Tao Tong, and it seems they want to know about number 11. Oh? With Tao Tong?" Ziyi Chuan was somewhat surprised, and then he thought of Tao Yu. As for inquiries about number 11, they were quite frequent, even high-level partners had asked before. After all, a reward of 120,000 was no small sum, even Ziyi Chuan had been tempted. But so far, only 2 teams had taken on the challenge, and neither had fared well. "Tiger, let's go. It looks like your precious nephew has come, we should go greet him," Ziyi Chuan said with a smile. "Right, the kid's a bit reckless this time." Tao Yu knew Tao Yu's strength had increased rapidly. In just 4 months he became a mid-level partner. Now, half a year had passed, and even though the pace of strength growth definitely slowed, he was probably not mediocre among mid-level partners. Frankly, he might already be on par with Captain Ziyi Chuan or stronger. But in the end, he was still young and lacked experience. Taking on such a mission now without a suitable team was very risky. It's okay, it's right for young people to be ambitious, they need to gain experience. If he wants to, we can accompany him and look together this time. We are old now, just here to escort and protect, Ziyi Chuan said, his method of dealing with the situation laid out, adding a fair bit of trouble for himself, but he felt it was absolutely worth it. Then the two arrived at the morgue entrance and saw Tao Yu and Tao Tong, the 2 brothers, walking towards them. "Captain Ziyi Chuan, Uncle Hu," Tao Tong greeted courteously first, followed by Tao Yu, who smiled and greeted as a sign of respect and politeness to the elders. "Ha, our genius of the outer city is here. Are you interested in the bounty on number 11? Ziyi Chuan asked with a chuckle. "A bit, I'm somewhat strapped for cash recently," Tao Yu replied, also with a smile, removing his face mask as a sign of politeness. "Number 11 is no easy target, today a body he killed was discovered in our South City district," Ziyi Chuan said as he led Tao Yu into the morgue. While it wasn't rare for people to die in the outer city, those warranting an autopsy were quite few. Usually, they were dealt with on the spot, either burned or dumped at the trash mountain. Tao Yu listened as Ziyi Chuan briefly shared some information on the side. "So you're saying the day before yesterday was in the East City district, and yesterday's body hasn't been found yet, meaning this one is from today?" Initially, Tao Yu thought this body might have been killed yesterday, but it turned out it was from today. "Yes, today's. He is very likely still in the South City district, but number 11 is very cautious, he never leaves a pattern, sometimes striking in the same area repeatedly, and sometimes going far between kills." Ziyi Chuan continued speaking to this point, then also let out a smile. "If young Master Tao is interested in this matter, Tiger and I can arrange for some people to accompany you to look for clues. After all, maintaining the order of the outer city is also our responsibility," he said. Ziyi Chuan watched as Tao Yu stared at the corpse and added support for his interest. "Thank you for your kind offer, Captain Ziyi Chuan, but I think that if we deploy too many people, given his caution, he would likely just run away," Tao Yu responded. Tao Yu rejected Ziyi Chuan's offer. He was here to make money, not to take a casual stroll and then head back. Before Tao Yu beside him could speak, Tao Yu's fingers turned into gangqi, a wisp of gangqi like a blade slid past the surface of the mummified corpse, cutting it open to reveal the bones inside. This one move immediately silences both Ziyi Chuan and Tao Yu. Being inexperienced, Tao Tong still didn't understand what was happening, and he looked somewhat bewildered at the 2 captains who abruptly fell silent. "What's going on? The atmosphere was fine just a moment ago, why has it suddenly become so awkward? Is it because of the younger brother's refusal of the goodwill? However, before he could formulate any new ideas, Tao Yu pulled out a piece of bone and gently crushed it in his hand, only to find that, apart from the outer layer, the entire skeleton was unbelievably brittle, without a single drop of bone marrow. It's possible that his goal wasn't to absorb blood, but to absorb bone marrow. Tao Yu casually tossed the crushed bone back onto the corpse, shook off his hand with force, and said calmly. He then turned back with a smile, glancing at the stunned faces of Ziyi-Chuan and Uncle Hu. I think I'll be able to handle it alone if I go find him, let's keep this between us for now. The guy is very cautious, so don't let him catch wind of this and run away, Tao Yu suggested. Tao Yu raised his hand in a hushing gesture, prompting two nods from the numb pair. Ziyi-Chuan's eyes filled with complicated emotions. He trod the path of strength, with his entire body penetrated by it, and he had mastered numerous other skills besides. His power made him no pushover among the middle-rank partners. But, he hadn't mastered the method of turning qi blood into gang qi. He didn't cultivate the myriad streams breathing technique. And although his set of real combat abilities was strong, it made it even harder to achieve gang qi. The simplest route he had planned for himself was to initially learn the myriad streams breathing technique in the outer city, then go to the inner city to spend money and master the 32 forms. If one had enough talent and invested sufficient Yuan Force to accelerate the process, it was quite possible to master gang qi and find the gateway to becoming a senior partner. Since his own development was fixed, he pinned his hopes on his son, and wanted to convince Lu Yi to plan well for him, but unfortunately, he had never agreed. It seemed that they had a tacit agreement to intentionally control the spread of the myriad streams breathing technique. Though the breathing technique wasn't as strict as the meditation technique, it was still best to have a level 5 expert guide and massage the body to aid understanding at the introductory phase. This left Ziyi-Chuan somewhat helpless, with no way to advance. Who would have thought that today he would actually witness a young man who had taken this path? The young truly are to be feared. Ziyi-Chuan sighed, indeed, youth held boundless potential. It had only been half a year, yet the progress was astoundingly fast. Standing beside him, Tao Hu felt a darkness looming before his eyes as well. His elder nephew had changed too much. Just 4 months ago becoming a middle-rank partner was already a rush of progress. At first, he also estimated that his strength wouldn't grow slowly, and by now it might have already surpassed that of Captain Ziyi-Chuan. But now, gang qi had even appeared. Something that even Captain Ziyi-Chuan didn't possess. After Tao Yu and Tao Tong left, Ziyi-Chuan said to Tao Hu with a sense of lament. Tiger, how many years have you been with me now? Not this again? At this moment, Tao Hu was also somewhat speechless. Maybe I should retire now, I'm afraid I might one day hinder you, and he'll come knocking on my door to finish me off. Ziyi-Chuan couldn't help but think of a previous unresolved case, the extermination of the Li family. Although the case had been dropped, Ziyi-Chuan learned afterward that it probably wasn't the work of those inner-city powers they initially suspected. But the incident had passed, and the truth, whatever it was, wasn't important, it was just a trivial matter after all.